Okay, good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I'm going to call the meeting to order. And I will ask the clerk to do a roll call.
Deputy Mayor Danielson.
You have to unmute.
Present.
Councillor Barry.
Present.
Councillor Dayu.
Present.
Councillor Shortreed.
Present.
Mayor Moffat.
Present. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest today? Oh, my apologies. We're going to approve the agenda first. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda? Councillor Dayu and Deputy Mayor Danielson. We'll get this right eventually.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that the June 18th, 2020 regular council meeting agenda be approved as circulated. Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Barry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. Now I'll call for any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we'll have the adoption of the minutes. May I have a mover and a seconder for the adoption of the previous minutes? Councillor Barry and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that the May 14th, 2020 special meeting and May 21st, 2020 regular meeting minutes be approved as circulated. Councillor Barry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. There are no public meetings and no delegations. Finance business is next, and we have Carl Pahaco from Pahaco Associates to talk about our draft financial statements, and he's going to be brought in, so we'll just have a moment here. Good morning, Carl. Can we unmute Carl? There we are.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us today. There, now we can see you better now. That's good.
There we go.
You're going to talk to us about our financial statements. So if you'd like to get that show on the road and talk to us about that.
Okay, very good. Shall do. Thank you, your mayor, your worship. I could ask the councillors to turn to page 1 of the package, which is the independent auditor's report. As you can see on this page, this is our independent auditor's report. This is a clean audit opinion. The auditor's report goes on now for some page and a half. So going back 15 years, this used to be a little 3-paragraph, half-a-page report, but in accordance with today's full disclosure and transparency, there's a fair bit of detail in this report. But at the end of the day, essentially it says that we conducted our audit in accordance with Canadian General Accepted Auditing Standards, and that in our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements present fairly the financial position of Algonquin Highlands as of December 31st, 2019. This is a consolidated financial statement. It includes both the accounts of the township as well as the accounts of the cemetery board. Some of the information in the independent auditor's report also identifies that the responsibility of preparation of the financial statements is of management and those charged with governance for the financial statements. Having said that, we of course assist staff in the preparation of these financial statements as and where necessary. We conducted our audit. We were at the township offices prior to the declaration of the pandemic. So in terms of audit process for this year, it was still a normal audit process. We were able to do our work regularly. The audit went very smoothly. At that time, Tammy was still with the township also, and between Tammy and Caitlin and our team, we were able to complete our audit on a timely basis without issue. So that's the independent auditor's report. I'd like to make a few comments in respect of the financial position and financial results for the year. So I'd ask you to turn to page 3 of the package. Yeah, we can see we'll start off with cash and cash equivalents for the year. Cash was up from 5.9 million at the end of last year to 7.3 million at the end of this year. These statements are, of course, at the end of your fiscal year, which is December 31st, 2019. As we go through the financial statements, I'll make a few comments in terms of what impact the cash balances. I say there were some significant government transfers and insurance settlement, a number of items that impacted cash favorably during the course of this year. Accounts receivable down slightly from the prior year, from 1,210,000 to 1,170,000. Accounts payable very comparable, 934,000 last year to 924,000 this year. Deferred revenue, this increased, and perhaps we'll take a look at some detail on that. So as you can see, it increased from 275,000 to 512,000. And if we turn to note 4, which you can find on page 10 of the package. So other deferred revenue, that increased significantly during the year. So essentially deferred revenue, you can't take for PSAB accounting purposes, you can't take amounts that have been received into income until they've been spent on the projects or that the reason that funding has been received. So in other revenue, you have a Trillium grant, there's an accessibility grant, and then some OCIF funding. So those were significant and resulted in the deferred revenue amount increasing at the end of the year. I'm back on page 3 of the package again, the statement of financial position. As you can see, municipal debt continues to decrease from 121,000 at the end of 2018 to 73,050. The details are in note 5, which again is page 10. You see, the only debt essentially that the township has at this point in time is the remainder balance of the Ontario Infrastructure Projects debenture, and that will be paid off in the next 2 years. 48,000 in 2020, and the remainder balance of 24,000 in 2021. On the balance sheet again, landfill closure and post-closure liability. As you can see, it continues to, as it should, increase from year to year as landfill capacity is utilized and we move closer to post-closure obligation expenditures. And so you see it increased from 1,467,000 to 1,485,000. There is detailed information in respect of the landfill closure and post-closure liability in note 7 to the financial statements. As you can see, the total estimated expenditure when you reach capacity eventually is $2.8 million. At the moment, we have approximately 1,485,000 set up as an obligation with the remaining landfill life site still of 72 years, which was at the most recent engineering study date of 2018. Tangible capital assets increased in the year from 13,883,000 to 14,259,000. Ask you to turn to Schedule 1, which is very near the back of the package. As we can see here, the additions during the year were a total of $1,714,000. Most significant was expenditures in vehicles of $814,000, roads and bridges, $495,000, and buildings, which I believe is a hangar for improvements for $272,000. We take a look at, in terms of comparing the net investment in capital assets. As you can see, we expended $1,714,000 this year, and then had to write down assets as their useful life is used up. So you can see the amortization was $1,319,000 during the year. So we had a net increase in investment in capital assets as opposed to a diminishing investment in capital assets for the year. I'm back on the statement of financial position. Smaller amounts, inventories of supplies are reflected, prepaid expenses. These are amounts that have been paid during calendar 2019, but relate to expenses actually of 2020. So anyway, when we add that all up, we have an accumulated surplus of $19,877,955 at the end of the year, as compared to $18,265,000 in the prior year. The next page on the package is the consolidated statement of operations, page 4. This page contains details in respect of the various categories of revenue and expenditures. Municipal accounting and accounting processes include detailed budgets and budget reviews on an ongoing basis. And so this is really the high level summary of the major categories. As you can see, property taxes increased from $5,228,000 to $5,462,000 during the year. User fees were up from $1,288,000 to $1,661,000. Significant this year was increase in government transfers. There was a provincial modernization funding that was received during the year. And also there was a insurance settlement related to a log chute program, I believe. So I think both those amounts were not necessarily budgeted, but did occur during the year. And so those amounts contributed to your increase in the cash position at the end of the year and to favorable variances in the respective accounts. So when we take all of the revenue and deduct all of expenses, we can see this is of course on a full PSAB basis. Again, this is accrual basis where capital expenditures are not an expense, they are capitalized. We already spoke about those. And then amortization is an expense. Deferred revenue is not revenue until it can be recognized. So on a full PSAB accounting basis, it was the annual surplus of $1,612,000. On page 6 of the package, for anyone that truly is interested in being an accountant, this analyzes the changes in the various balance sheet categories, if you will. A fair bit of detail. Again, we've seen a number of these numbers already. You can see amortization, you can see investment of capital assets, the $1,714,000. But at the very bottom of that schedule, you can see your investment income. Essentially, taxation and investment income interest received was $297,000 in the year, as compared to $248,843 in the prior year. Just quickly going through the balance of the notes to the statements, pages 7, 8, and 9. These are your accounting policies. We review these accounting policies on an annual basis to ensure that they still are appropriate and that they're comparable to other similar sized townships, such as to Algonquin Highlands. There were no changes in your accounting policies during the course of the year. We talked about the amortization of capital assets. You can see on page 8. Here are the various periods of time that you write off the various types of capital assets that you have. You can see land improvements, 15 years, buildings, 40 years, machinery, depending on type of machinery and equipment, and range from 5 to 20 years. Of course, roads and bridges, the longest amortization periods, typically somewhere between 15 and 40 years, depending on the particular road or bridge. On page 9 of the package, note number 2, details in respect of amounts that you collect on behalf of school boards in the county of Haliburton. Again, we review that these amounts are collected and remitted appropriately, and there's detail in terms of the amounts collected and the amounts remitted in this note. On page 11, information here in respect of your credit facility. The credit facility has not been drawn. The two facilities actually, a $700,000 facility and a $2 million facility. None of these amounts were drawn at the end of the year. Page number 12, note number 9, detail in respect of various contracts that have been entered into by the township. These include, as you can see, site attendance services at the landfill sites, environmental monitoring agreement. During the year, you had a new agreement at the Dorset Health Hub for internet services. And the very last page of the package, some details in respect of reserves. You can see the various reserve categories. Working capital reserve increased in the year from $1,015,000 to $1,778,000. Recreation and culture increased from $947,000 to $1,418,000. Total reserves and reserve funds of $7,118,000 at the end of the year versus $5,990,000 at the end of the prior year. So overall, from our perspective as an independent external auditors, a healthy financial position of the township. I always say that guardedly from the perspective of the cost of replacement of capital assets is so significant these days that it doesn't take a lot to create a problem. But overall, I say that you've got a net investment in capital assets in the year and an overall healthy cash position with virtually no debt at all. And those would be my comments, Madam Mayor.
Thank you for those. Are there any questions of Mr. Pahapel from members of council? Okay, well, I guess when we are in as good shape as we are, there aren't many questions to be asked. And certainly you've had the good fortune to work for a number of years with Tammy and Caitlin, and we look forward to developing as successful a relationship with our new treasurer, Jean Hughes, who you can see on the screen here. I don't know if you've met in person or not yet.
I have not, but my partner, Marianne Poland, did meet Jean already also, and we look forward to working with Jean.
Great, thank you very much. Well, I know that it's nice to see the reserves as healthy as they are. We work hard at that and do the best we can to, it always sounds funny when you say we're trying to move the money around, but strong reserves and no debt is a good place to be. So I appreciate, on behalf of council, your time to explain and take us through the report. And we'll carry on from here if there's no further questions. Everyone's smiling and nodding, so I think we'll carry on from there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. May I have a mover and a seconder to accept the report? Councillor Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that council hereby acknowledges a presentation made by Carl Pahapel of Pahapel and Associates regarding the 2019 draft financial statements, and that council accepts the 2019 consolidated financial statements as presented. Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Counselor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Counselor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
And Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is the treasurer's report on the GIC renewal option. Jeannie, if you take it away for us.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. So the GIC renewal, we are due up to renew the GIC as of June 19th, 2020, so tomorrow. And I was in touch with our bank representative, and he is suggesting that might be an idea to lock in for one more year on the GIC. At the time of the report, the rate was down to 1.5% for a 1-year term. And currently in our checking account or bank accounts, we're looking at a 0.55% interest rate as of May 2nd. So I do think that the bank rates will likely decline, possibly more. I'm not an expert on that, but I'm basically asking for council's direction as to if they wish to renew the GIC.
Thoughts from council on the GIC renewal? Councillor Shortreed.
I can't see rates going anywhere but down. So I think a 1 year at 1.5 is great. Actually, when prime's only at what, 0.5%?
Yeah, I think you have to stick with what works for now, because there is so much uncertainty out there. Any other thoughts from council on this recommendation? No, I'm going to take that as concurrence. So, that's right. My apologies. I'm looking to the clerk to read the resolution, but we need a mover and a seconder for this to move forward. Councillor Berry and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Counselor Berry, seconded by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that council receives Treasury Report TT 920 regarding the upcoming renewal of the GIC investment certificate submitted by Jean Hughes dated June 9th, 2020, and that council directs staff to renew the investment as recommended by the financial specialist for an additional 1-year term at the renewal rate of June 19th, 2020. Counselor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Counselor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Counselor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
And Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. Next up is the treasurer's report on offsetting budget impacts. And this is generally for information. It's a bit of a big picture look at where we stand. The treasurer has been keeping track of revenue losses due to the various closures under provincial order. So I'm going to ask, and we haven't seen the full revenue losses yet because we make most of our money in the summertime.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there are some increased costs, not terrifically increased costs, but some that we will see going forward. But I am going to ask that each department head gets brought in. So I think they're all going to pop on your screen in a moment. And when they do, we'll carry on from there. Is everybody there? I've only got a half a screen because I've got the agenda up on one side. So are they all there?
They are.
They are. Welcome, department heads. So I'm kind of flying by the seat of my pants here, but what I'd like to do is Jeannie's going to take us generally through the report, and I would like to ask the various department heads when we go through their section in the report if there's anything that they would like council to consider eliminating already out of this year's budget or not, and then council will consider those items or those projects, and then the treasurer will bring back. We'll revisit the whole picture when we have the revenue losses more towards the end of the summer. But Jeannie, if you'd like to take us through your report, please.
Okay, thank you. So council requested that we put together a report to offset the budget impacts created by COVID. So I reached out to all of the department heads and asked them to kind of take a look at the projects and plans that they had for 2020 to see where we could see some savings. So I can speak to Treasury. First and foremost in Treasury, as I say, we've had a job vacancy, 2 positions actually. The biggest being the deputy treasurer's position. So we are going to see a significant savings in wages. And then the other option, the other savings that we'll see in admin is in training and conference costs, because things have been canceled for 2020 in most cases. Now there are virtual options becoming available that could see some costs back in, so the total savings could be adjusted at the end of the year. And then the one item that we can consider or have council's consideration on is the office upgrades and the basement renovation. With that, it's the step at the side of the building and insulation and that in the basement. So that would be one that would be up for discussion.
Okay, and how would council like to handle this? Do you want everyone to go through their sections and then have a discussion, or do you want to discuss each section as we go? What's council's pleasure on that?
I'm going to say each as we go.
Okay.
Sorry.
First person to speak wins. Okay, so the treasurer has identified that those upgrades in the basement work could be delayed or deferred until next year. Is that something that you want to consider, and I'm going to ask this for every section, or do you want to wait to see how the revenues offset this in a couple of months? Leave this at the big picture and offset it later. Councillor Dayu.
My feeling when I was reading through this is that yes, and thank you, Jeannie, also for speaking to me yesterday on the phone. You helped to clarify quite a bit. But my question really is whether it's possible to project what those revenue losses might be. You know, we more or less know what the Dorset Tower income stream is for June, July, August, September. So could we project, well, should it remain closed through July, this would be the revenue loss. Should it remain closed through August, this would be the revenue loss, etc. So that we would have something. I don't know. I have difficulty discussing the things to let go of before we even have a projection on the revenue losses, if that makes sense.
And we can provide a projection loss of revenue, but again, it is only a projection because it's all up in the air. So that was basically the report that we provided last month, was sort of an idea of where we were at the time, and it was basically a projection at that time.
Yeah.
So yes, we can do that. It just won't be right on because it's projection.
Yeah, and nothing is going to be very exact as we move through this process, because there are so many unknowns and external factors. If the treasurer does a projection through July, as you just mentioned, Councillor Dayu, and then things change and we open the Dorset Tower, then it's a half a month. So we have to acknowledge that we will be a bit fuzzy around the edges there, because it's until we get to the end and know for sure that there will be some unknowns attached to that. Sure. I think Deputy Mayor Danielson had her hand up.
Thank you. I did. I agree that it is somewhat difficult to try and decide whether to defer things or not until we do have, like, even if they're fuzzy numbers, we can bring things together a little bit better, knowing what our revenue losses are balanced against the savings. My concerns are that twofold. One, we've been urged by the province to try and make available to any projects that we think that we can go forward with, even if they're not exactly shovel ready, to try and help to boost the economy, to make whatever work we can make available. And I'm afraid that if we defer some projects, I'm thinking that we're not yet aware of what's going to hit us from the province next year. I think that we're going to be taking probably some downloads and some hits that we're not even aware of yet. And I hate to see us sort of back up some of the projects that we've got planned, and then end up having to have a much greater increase in our taxation next year. It's just sort of some general concerns about dropping projects if we don't have to.
Yeah, I think good point made. And one of the things that we do need to keep in mind is that some of the projects are projects that will be done by external contractors through a bid or a tender process. Some of them will be done by our own internal staff. And our own internal staff are rather on their heads at the moment. So we know, for example, some of the smaller construction or for example, the airport project in the basement, that's likely to be done by our own staff. And they are tremendously slowed down now anyway with all of the cleaning and PPE protocols required to maintain health and safety. So those are also some considerations in terms of projects that may be able to be deferred because they're done internally by our own staff who are currently already slowed down with their regular duties due to those health and safety protocols and requirements. So just another piece of food for thought. And we can certainly, I guess what I'm hearing is that there's interest really in just accepting this for information, and we'll wait for those projections to get a better picture. The other thing we think we need to take care of or have regard for is how late in the year can we hold off some of these projects and still get them done in the year. So we can't wait too far down the calendar for some projects that simply then won't be able to get done within the calendar year. So, and I know Jeannie's planning to bring back the current status of those revenue losses to offset these possible gains. But we could do the projections, Jeannie, if they're not, as Councillor Dayu asked, if that's not too much financial shenanigans for you to do those projections and give us a better picture. What are your thoughts on that?
That's possible, totally.
Okay, so does council then just want to receive this for information, not go through it section by section, then get a better idea of those other losses and the offsets? Admittedly, the other part is there are some, on my own notes I've written, there's given wins. So there's nothing for us to discuss around savings found in any job vacancies or fuel savings or conferences and any reduced expenditures for buildings that are closed. Those are kind of done deals. So really it's sort of the capital and internal projects that will be the focus of our attention going forward, I think. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I do think that seeing how the department heads are here, that there might be some value in going through each section just so we're more familiar with which projects and why they could be let go. For instance, I've got a question on the administration portion. I'm not quite sure whether we planned on doing the basement renovations internally or as a contract. So I guess I'm saying that I like to see us maybe go through the report anyway, so that our heads are in the right space when we get the offsetting revenue losses.
We can do that if I can see some nodding heads or shaking heads around the table and they're all nodding, that's good. Okay, then it's under your line item there, Jeannie, so perhaps you could tell us about the basement, if that's an internal or an external job.
Well, actually, I'm going to defer that to either Angie or Adam because I'm not sure what the intention was, whether it was going to be internal or external. So I'm sure they can speak to it.
Okay, who would like to speak to that? The CAO or the operations manager? Somebody put their hand in the air. Oh, there you go. Mr. Thorne, tell us about the basement work.
Good morning, everyone. Well, at this time, we had changed from going into the basement regarding the office renovation down there, and we have moved offices around upstairs to make more room for the maintenance coordinator that has not been brought on yet. As far as the renovation goes to the insulation in the basement, very similar to the airport, we were planning on going around and insulating the box joists of the building, as it is currently not done in the older section of the office. So the insulation has not been there. I couldn't speak to how long it hasn't been there. However, if it was to extend for one more season, we would just see a cost savings in our hydro right now if it was completed. If it was pushed off to another year, we would not see any increase in costs, as it has been this way for the past couple of years.
Right, so now the challenge is save the money or save the energy costs. So it could be a trade-off.
Yes.
Okay, so does council want to make any of these decisions, or do you just want to hear, Liz, you'd said, do you want to go through it? Do you just want to hear what each person has to say, or do you want to make decisions? What would council like to do? Councillor Dayu?
I'd be happy just to hear it at this stage. And I do have a quick question for Adam. Adam, do you think that construction material costs are going up, or contracting costs continue to go up, and will that continue for the coming year? I just wonder if if we pay $10 for something this year, are we going to pay 12 if we defer it next year?
At this time, that is, I'm uncertain to be able to answer that correctly. So far, the projects that we have had put in place and have had completed so far have all honored the price that has been set out. Any contractors I have spoken to about future projects are saying that they're super busy, that they are still booking into next year. So I haven't heard of any kind of increased costs in that regard, but I guess it would be dependent on the project itself.
I don't know if that was very helpful.
Sorry.
Well, I'm not criticizing. It's just that it is like so many things. There are just so many unknowns at this point. Okay, well then we'll tuck that away, and if we can, I'm going to just switch my screen here so I can actually see the fire chief. There he is. Good morning, Chief.
Good morning.
If you could just give us a rundown of your section, and I don't think we need to spend too much time on what I call the given wins of job vacancies and fuels and conferences. I think we know that those are the savings because of the pandemic situation, but you've got a number of capital purchases. So if you could take us through those and just take us through those.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we will see some cost savings with the cancellation of training, but also we have had a decrease in calls too. So, but the one project that I suggested we could defer to next year was the replacement of the furnace at Station 16 in Dorset. It is limping along, and the only concern for me would be that if the unit does die, that we may have to replace it on an emergency basis.
Okay, and you've noted in the report that the remainder of the projects are related to the health and safety of firefighters, and I don't think anybody wants to mess with that. And so then we can put a little circle around furnace in Station 60, and that's something we can consider as a hard item going forward. Is there anything else in the fire services that you want to mention at this time?
No.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Thor, we're back to you for public work. Sorry, does anybody have any questions of the fire chief on that particular section? Oh, sorry, now I have to go back to my other split screen here so I can actually see council. Adam, we're back to you for public works.
So as you can see in the report, we have pushed forward some possible savings. The one that jumps out at me right now that I would like to offer up would be the installation of the garage in Dorset. If there is savings required, what I would recommend or what I would like to suggest is that we tender that project this year, which would give us the exact cost for the project. And we would set the start date for 2021. Right now, this is just an estimated cost of, we budgeted roughly $120,000 for the replacement of the insulation in the building, in the ceiling. So if we were to move forward with this, we could tender that project this year and then have an exact cost, whether that would be more or less than the 120. At least we would know exactly what that is and have it set for next year.
Okay, I'm just scribbling that down. Okay, and so that's again, I'm just going to say the ones that we can sort of tuck away into our pocket for our next discussion. Any thoughts from council on that particular point? Anybody who thinks running Zoom meetings is easy, they're not. They're just they're kind of awkward. I'm not seeing any hands, so Adam, if you can carry on with your list.
Other than that, like you said, we will see the savings in some of the staff and training which is in most departments. We do have training scheduled for in October, and depending on what happens with this predicted second wave towards the end of the year, that could potentially be postponed as well. So I'd keep you up to date on that. The airport project, I will be coming to council next week with an update on the funding that we did not receive for one of the major projects that is down at the airport. But for the most part, a lot of our projects that we had planned for this year are multi-year projects and all related to continued health and safety and end of service life for equipment.
You've got the which is just fun to say, the sludge evaluation project, and you're suggesting that could be postponed, and the airport basement insulation work. It's not a large amount of money. Is that an internal? Going back to Liz's questions, that's an internal job? Is it?
Yeah, so the airport job was going to be an internal job, and very similar to like I was speaking to about the main office here. It's insulating the box joists and framing of the basement. Currently, it's just cinder block basement walls, so we were planning to insulate and frame. It's been like that for many years, so it could potentially stay like that for another year and reassess at budget time and potentially bring it back to the 2021 budget discussion. Also, with regard to the landfill sludge evaluation, further discussion with Jean and the environmental coordinator, we did move forward with the evaluation, and we did find that there was a savings on the evaluation. But we would, once we receive the evaluation information back on what kind of sludge we're dealing with at the lagoon, that project could potentially be held off.
Okay, so we've got a couple in that section. Any questions of council so far on what Adam has spoken about? Councillor Deputy Mayor Danielson?
Two things about the sludge evaluation. Are we getting much use at the lagoon?
Yes. Yeah. Actually, just today, we actually had a request for to allow a contractor to use it.
Okay, so as you say, we need to wait for the evaluation project before we really know where we stand with that, before we know if we can defer it or not.
That's correct. And we're just in the middle of waiting for that at this point. And then, yes, we can move forward from there.
The second question was, and I'm just wondering about deferring the project at the airport. It seems like if we did have the manpower available to do the work, I'm just thinking, because technically the airport is well, not technically, it's closed right now to the public. And there is no staff working in there, so it might actually be an optimum time to do that project.
And if I may, this time of year is not the ideal time for staff to be doing those projects, just due to lawn maintenance and cemetery maintenance. So really, that project would have been held off until the fall when things start to slow down for the staff. That's when that was going to be scheduled to be completed.
Okay, so we've got some time.
Yeah, we can circle back to that. And things, again, because external factors, we don't know where we're headed with the pandemic and provincial orders and continued requirements for those health and safety protocols and the time available for staff to do the work. So that's lucky that it's meant to be done in the fall, because that, you're right, it does buy us some time. And then, are there any other questions of Adam so far? I'm just going to move into the roads and maintenance part. Okay, Adam, go ahead.
As far as roads and maintenance, again, we're back to the training. We're back to staffing. And a lot of the projects we've been moving forward with, we're almost complete right now with the road resurfacing projects and the North Shore Road project. The geo drilling has been completed, and you'll see a report come to council on the information regarding that. So there's not really a lot of savings there that I would propose at this time.
Okay, that's fair enough. Any questions from council on Adam's overall suggestions? Okay, thank you, Adam. And building department is next. David is on the screen. There really isn't an awful lot for him to give up.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. You're correct. There's no capital projects that we have, so.
Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Planning department, Mr. Planner Man. There he is, Mr. O'Callaghan. You've got a couple of thoughts there.
Yeah, I guess with the zoning bylaw review, there could be some potential savings depending on if we move forward with a virtual public meeting format versus the traditional in-person. So there's that, along with the savings in conferences. The OPPI conference has been canceled this year, so.
Yeah, along with everything else too.
Mm-hmm.
I have to say that my immediate, I read that, and in my notes on the side, in big letters, I wrote, no. I think that the public process of a zoning bylaw amendment is far too important, and that taking that to a virtual meeting would be very difficult to manage, and I don't think would give us the feedback that we need. But that is just my thoughts on that, and it just makes me. I don't think it's worth the savings of the $3,500 that we can easily see recouped elsewhere, because zoning bylaw is so important, and we have a number of contentious issues that we need a thorough discussion on for the future of the community. Councillor Dayu.
I echo your thoughts, but if asked to choose between virtual dialogue or no dialogue, such as postponing the bylaw review to a future date, I would absolutely vote for virtual dialogue with constituents. You know, we've been asked to hold back on this important review for so long. We've finally been given the green light. We're coming up to halfway through term, and there's so much to do and so much to chew through and work on. And I wouldn't want to see us delaying this. And I think the more innovative we are in coming up with ways to engage with the public, the better. But yeah, if it's between postponing or virtual, I'm going to say virtual myself.
Yeah, and I can't say that I disagree there, but there are tremendous challenges, and with respect to your time on council, there have been public meetings that have been moved to the community center because there were 200 people at them, and I can't fathom how we would undertake any kind of public virtual meeting when there are, any more than 10 or 15 people who want to have a say in a matter. And we do know that we do intend to discuss have a robust discussion about short-term rentals, and we know, each of us know, that that's a tremendously passionate discussion, and there's going to be, I know, a lot of people who want to weigh heavily into that conversation. So I think there's a balance of finding the best and most fair way to get public input without creating some sort of monster that has 800 faces on a screen. So I think there needs to be a little bit more consideration of how to make that work. To me, it's a tough one, because we need the public input, particularly at the zoning level. But I can't personally figure out how we would entertain the number of people that could possibly want to be involved in these very important discussions. I do recall one year we did we talked about boathouses, because with the amalgamation of 20 years ago now, there are different requirements or permissions for boathouses in the Stanhope area versus the Sherburne et al. Area. And this room here was full to the rafters with people who wanted to have a say. And then the next meeting the room was full of to the rafters of people who wanted to say the opposite of people who had spoken the time before. So it's going to take some careful consideration. What does the rest of council think about what Councillor Dayu has said? Deputy Mayor Danielson?
I'm just wondering what the time frame for the first pub meeting would be. Is it later on in the year? I guess I'm wondering if we have a little bit of time to think about how we might manage an in-person versus virtual meeting. What's the scheduling? I guess I want to know when we're going to start talking about it too.
Mr. O'Callaghan, what are your thoughts on that?
So we are preparing, there should be a short report coming to council with respect to short-term rentals and discussion between staff and council on that matter specifically. But as far as scheduling is concerned, we were supposed to have our first sort of public meeting to gather input back in May. So we're already pushing it pretty close to be able to accomplish it over the summer months in the traditional format that, I mean, that's the way zoning bylaw reviews have always been done. So I think it would be a stretch at this point to be able to complete that project over the summer months, that is, with all the public input that would be required as part of the process.
Well, and we always make sure that we hold the public input portions of these processes in the summer months to accommodate seasonal residents. And so it's a very short window. Councillor Barry?
The way I understood it, we were going to sort of look at the zoning bylaw sort of piece by piece, and then we would then have a public meeting discussing the zoning bylaw as a whole. Is that still the plan, or how many public meetings were you planning to originally have?
So the background work is still being completed, and that's still going to be brought forward with the legislative changes that we have to make and changes that have been identified by staff as needing some input on. The amount of public meetings, I believe we're at 2, possibly 3, with the potential of breaking out specific topics and holding a specific meeting just for those more controversial ones.
And those are the ones that are controversial, of course, are the ones where we're likely to have the most people who want to participate, which will then make them the most challenging. You know, and this conversation is maybe we can defer it to when Sean brings his report to the next meeting. Is around this scheduling and how we want to do it, and we'll maybe have a little more information on public health recommendations and requirements for distancing and whatnot. You know, do you have a public meeting in the in the community center, in the Dorset Recreation Center, and everybody has to sit in a chair and the chairs are 6 feet apart? Or, I mean, there are ways to do it, but they could be onerous, but they could be the way that we no different than the grocery store, where you have to have a cart to go in the store and there's an arrow on the floor and you can only go one way. It would just be a slower process, I think. But we can maybe, Sean, could we have, when you come with that discussion paper to the next meeting, is it possible to have a proposed schedule or some ideas of what this might look like?
Certainly, yeah, I can put something together for that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Barry?
Is there a consideration for having a special meeting so that we could move the conversation along during the summer at a faster speed?
So my intent.
We can do anything. I mean, Sean, is how ready is your report? Is the and it might be worth having a separate meeting to talk about short-term rentals. That's what you're saying, Lisa?
Yes.
Yeah. Sean?
Yes, that was my intention. So once that report is complete, that'll be sent out to council to have time to review and put some thought to it. And then, yes, have a separate meeting to specifically discuss just that one topic, which I think will frankly be the bulk of the zoning bylaw review.
Okay, so we'll, do you have a timeline on that? Like, would we be looking at having a special meeting, say, in 2 weeks or a week? What's your timing on that short-term rental report?
So the report should be complete this week, early next week at the latest, and then I'll be reaching out to council to establish, I guess, everyone's availability. So I'm hoping in the next few weeks that we'll be having that discussion.
Mm-hmm. And I think, at least I do see your hand, I think it's important because I don't know the numbers, but I know that there's some folks out there who are watching. The fact that council is going to have a council discussion on a report prepared by a staff member in no way eliminates the public part or the public process or input. So just to get that out there on the table, that we'll talk about it first to put a framework in place to take to the public for that. So we just need to make sure that we're not shutting the public out of any of that important discussion. Councillor Barry.
Just my thoughts, because these meetings, and I'm assuming our special meeting, are digital, maybe because that is an option, our public meetings won't be overly subscribed if people have had an opportunity to see the discussion digitally.
Yeah, that's actually that's a good point. Is often people attend because they want to hear what's on on the agenda. They want to hear the conversation, and you're right. And so if as many people as possible can hear our discussion digitally, it might either solidify their concerns or perhaps assuage them so that they don't need to come somewhere in person. People can also submit comments in writing, and they can speak to their counselors as well. So good point there. Okay, so we'll wait for Sean's report on that, and as well, Sean, if you could provide that little bit of a timeline of how many meetings you think we need to have and what the likelihood is of being able to achieve them successfully with the appropriate amount of public input, that would be great.
Yep, certainly.
On that, is everybody okay with that discussion and that process on that topic? You see nodding heads. Councillor Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I'm just concerned that like Sean said, that's the major topic of discussion or the most contentious one, but we had talked about going through the zoning bylaw section by section. There have been a number of items that we've raised over the last couple of years that we need to talk about, and we're not talking about them. So, I don't want to see the summer sort of get away and us not having had the discussions that we think we need to have on changes that we might like to see in the zoning bylaw. And to me, we need to have those discussions before it goes public.
And it certainly, in asking Sean for a timeline, it would have been my understanding from our conversation that those breakout items would be included as part of that. So as members of council, we're not looking at anything that says, Tuesday this and Wednesday that and Friday the other. We are looking at this big picture monstrosity that needs discussing. So it would be my understanding that Sean's report would include those his suggestions for those breakout discussions. Okay, is that doable, Sean?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So we'll see that shortly. Sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
He's nodding, so that's good. Is that okay, Liz?
Yep.
Any other questions of Sean on this? Okay, we will. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
We will move to Mr. Card for Parks, Rec, and Trails. Where is he? Here he is. There he's down there on my screen. So you've got a number of things that are ahead. Chris, could you take us through that, please?
Yes, good morning. So a couple things up front that are really just going to be savings based on the situation we're in, such as the recreation guide. We were planning on working with our neighboring municipalities on developing a recreation programming guide to be put out this year, and basically all of those programs that would have been in that guide are canceled. So there's no need for that guide to move forward. Our canoe rental program consists of 24 canoes that we rent out of the Frost Center next to my office at the Trails office there on St. Nora Lake as part of the Algonquin Highlands Water Trails. And each year we replace up to 3 of those canoes just as a regular replacement schedule. And right now we're not offering canoe rentals, so we've missed a good portion of the beginning of the season. We're just getting things potentially back up and running right now based on COVID restrictions. And a lot of the asset life management plan around the canoe rental program requires that the revenue essentially supports some of the building of the reserves, which then supports the purchase of canoes each year. So not fully understanding the entire loss of revenue, I'd offer that we postpone the purchase of the 3 canoes this year and just run with what we have in place at the time. And finally, under Parks and Trails is just another savings just based on the situation is our we had one new maintenance staff related to parks scheduled for a playground inspector certification course. Those courses aren't running this year, so there will be savings there. So otherwise, all of the other projects that were highlighted during projects and priorities in the fall are relative to maintenance on buildings or planned scheduled replacement of equipment that's reached the end of its life cycle, et cetera. And I suggest moving forward with those.
Yeah, I think the thing we want to be careful of is, which is why we need the next report on the projected revenue losses, is we don't want to put ourselves behind the 8 ball with those necessary end of life replacements and projects that have been previously committed, some of which perhaps have been deferred over many years. So we just don't want to get too far behind the 8 ball. And in terms of Chris, for the Dorset Tower part, we have not heard about the money that we applied for.
No, we haven't gotten any indication either way on that. During the application process, we weren't anticipating getting an indication probably until the 3rd quarter.
Okay, and then and buildings and properties, you know, I'm thinking even with the Dorset Tower for things like an additional seating area, it's not open, and also with electricity to the Boxing Lake Community Center or the swing set, again, people aren't allowed to gather. So, you know, are those things we can put in our back pocket? I mean, the swing set is coming from reserves anyway, but one of the discussions is there's no budgetary impact because it's coming from reserves, but are we going to be in a position where we maybe want to hang on to our reserves for unknowns in the future? So when we see the projections of the potential losses, that we can revisit these projects in more detail. Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I can definitely see deferring the play set, particularly because that's one of the things that we're still not allowed to have available. I was just kind of wondering about wiring the gazebo, because that's one of the small contracts that we could make available to help boost the economy a little bit. And at least it would be there for when we can use it or when people can gather there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and to your point as well, 10 people are allowed to gather, so 10 people could have a barbecue there.
Well, that's right.
So there's that, and so with having been so many restrictions and people staying home, and concerns about not being able to socialize and some mental health challenges, I can see that, you know, a small job like that, you're right, could lead to people having a place to go and in the groups they're allowed to gather and actually be outside and do something as opposed to being trapped at home. So okay, so we can keep those. I'm putting square boxes around the things that are kind of on offer. Chris, what else do you want to talk to us about that outlines your world?
One thing to consider with at the Oxton Community Center in relation to the swing set is that it's part of the overall plan for revamping that space. That also we put in the pavilion and working on the vault privy placement, et cetera. And a part of that process would be to involve the recreation committee there in selecting a swing set and placement, et cetera. And currently we're not having regular meetings with that committee. So there would be challenges there if we wanted to move that portion of the project ahead.
Well, and we've also, we have the decision that we've made on the land, and perhaps Mr. O'Callaghan could speak to that. What's the timeline on that? Again, it's coming from reserve, so maybe it doesn't matter, but there's a number of steps that have to be in place. Not only the ones that Chris just mentioned, but the land use work that needs to be done there. Sean, can you speak to that a little bit?
It was my understanding that was to be budgeted for next year. So there would be some steps involved with the lawyer, but I mean, generally, I would estimate 2 months, 2 to 3 months to complete that.
Okay, so the swing set, for example, may not happen because there's too many factors that ahead of it to get it placed, and it's from reserves. We could swing it back into reserves. But anyway, I mean, we're not making those decisions today. Councillor Dayu, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, I might be getting too far off into blue sky thinking here, but if the committees of council aren't able to meet to discuss things like placement of privies or placement of the swing set, that sort of thing, I throw it out there. I wonder if it's possible for me as councillor to talk to a number of folk within the Oxtown community to gather a more informal sense of their thoughts. And if the committee, who are neighbors, if they are informally welcoming of that idea, maybe we could push this along just by a usual councillor constituent conversation rather than the formal way. Don't know if I'm overstepping my boundary there.
Well, and I would defer to the clerk around the appropriateness of those conversations in terms of transparency of meetings with the, I don't know, like that's.
Yeah, I would suggest if there's any decisions being made or discussions with committee members, that it has to be done through a formal meeting with an agenda, advertised to the public, open to the public.
Mm-hmm. Transparency is us. Councillor Dayu?
Sorry, and I do see Liz's hand, but just to follow up on that, but from my understanding, there would be no decision because it's not the decision of the Committee of Council to say where anything is going to go. That is a municipal decision. So if all we're doing is soliciting ideas or wishes, then I wonder if that could be something that could be done more informally. Voila.
So there's a committee that's been struck and approved by council to participate in these decisions. My fear would be opening up the door for councillors to just check with the neighbors to see how they think on any decision. And then, I mean, that's part of a councillor's job at the table anyway. It's my expectation that when there are discussions held that each councillor has checked with the folks in their ward and that they're speaking on behalf of the people that elected them to do so. I think I would have to defer to the clerk. It's her professional job to know how these things need to be handled, and I would have some concerns about opening the door to just checking with folks to see if they like the idea. That is of concern to me. One of the things we can talk about too is, you're right, committees aren't meeting, and for a number of reasons, and that may change with a little bit of time. So maybe that's something that the clerk or the EOC can talk a little bit about is how to make that happen. Other committees are starting to meet, so it would be very difficult for committees to meet, for example, even in the council chambers here. Some committees have a number of enough people on them that it would be difficult to distance. Some people may not want to participate in that. I think there are a couple of factors. It doesn't sound to me like there's too many steps ahead of placing privies and swing sets anyway. I think we're not there yet. From what I've heard, certainly from the planner, 2 to 3 months, and there's a couple of things that are going to be in the way of actually tendering a swing set or however we purchase it and then putting it in place. But we can, let's circle back on that. Maybe by the time we meet in a couple of weeks for the planner's report on the zoning bylaw, there'll be just a few more pieces of information that can contribute to this conversation. And perhaps we can ask the clerk to, you know, check in with neighbors and see how other municipalities are managing. We have a whole pile of really keen volunteers who have committed to help us move the community forward. And, you know, they're not able to do that at the moment. So that's a loss for us and a loss for them too. So can we just park that for now and just get some more information and see what the steps are? And I have made a note that for the treasurer that to this list of things, my note very callously says list of chopping block items, but then also steps that are ahead of projects. So instead of us wandering around about swing sets, let's have staff tell us first this, then that, then the other, then that project. If in fact there are those steps ahead, then we'll be a little more organized in that thought process. And that might provide some clarity for us. Deputy Mayor Danielson, are you waving your hand around there?
I am waving my hand around.
What would you like to say?
I'm just kind of wondering about, you're talking about the schedule, and forgive me if I misunderstood, but I didn't think that we were going to wait to do the work on survey and the land part until next year. I saw that happening this year. I mean, that can happen COVID or no COVID, and we would at least have that portion of it done before next year when we, you know, start talking about placement of items.
And I'm more than happy to confess that I have completely forgotten what the process is there. So perhaps Mr. O'Callaghan could remind us again, or the CAO.
Yeah. So the report at the last council meeting proposed moving forward with the work of moving the privy this year and budgeting for the legal and surveying expenses and completing the merger in 2021.
So if I may, does moving the survey, that doesn't preclude us from continuing on to do what we want to do on the property?
No, we're permitted. We can move the privy now and still be in compliance with the zoning bylaw.
Okay. I just didn't want to see us lose a bunch of time on that.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Card.
And the privy was within the same consideration as far as consulting with the committee, so that still has that component attached to it.
Right. So let's figure that part out. And the clerk is nodding yes, and so we'll figure that part out as to find a way to abide by our own rules and regulations for those committees to, particularly that one, to help move this project along. So we'll find that out. Leave that with her. And Chris, anything else from you for this report? And I'm happy. This is a great discussion. I had no idea it would take this much time, but there's lots of good information. Chris, is there anything else that you want to say?
Just pointing out the other item that I was able to put on this report is we had scheduled the refrigerator replacement at the Stanhope Community Center kitchen. The past few years, we've been gradually upgrading various components as part of the kitchen. And this is the industrial sized refrigerator, and there's just not parts available for it anymore. And it's not as efficient as we would like it to be. And it also has some issues with it as well. However, I did speak to the maintenance personnel who operate that kitchen, and they feel that it's still serviceable to get us through this year, just based on the circumstance that the hall is not being rented out at this time, and we're not gaining revenues from it, and move that ahead to next year.
Okay, that's great. So all in all, the treasurer has identified a possible savings of $160,000, but of course, as we've already noted, that's against what losses, so we don't know that yet. So unless anybody else has anything that they want to add, I'm thinking we can leave this conversation where it is and look forward to Jeannie's projections of revenues and maybe with some time, some things will open up that will change those numbers. I mean, we know they're going to change anyway. And the other part of the question is, in terms of some of these projects, is how long we can hold them off before they just simply wouldn't get done due to timelines in the remainder of the year. So I've made some notes based on what council has asked for, and we'll circle that back and pick this conversation up at our next meeting. Is that okay with council? Councillor Barry?
Just a thought, if we are going to be deferring any projects, not only is that a financial savings, but I think as far as our staff are concerned, I'm not saying that they have extra time on their hands, but if a project is deferred and there is an opening of some time, would there be opportunities for some of our, we have had our visioning session and we had our budget discussion and we identified some strategic things that we would like to see come forward. If we're going to defer some projects, is it an opportunity for some of those discussions to happen now?
So our commitment around,
I'm thinking about the boat launches and that type of things that we were discussing as things that we want to see come forward.
You're talking about what we call the big picture list.
Yeah.
So the timeline on the big picture list was meant to be September. We were waiting for the outcome of the service delivery review at the county level to see if there were anything in that that might affect any discussions that we might have. And so, yeah, the timeline on that was, and I did look that up because I sent it to Councillor Dayu, who asked the same question. My notes said that conversation was, we were aiming for September to start some of those conversations. I can't find the notes. So, I mean, we could, I guess, philosophical discussions about docks and landings. Also, we need the asset management plan. That's lost in the ether somewhere, the COVID ether. So there are a couple of key pieces to feed into and inform that conversation that we don't have. Deputy Mayor Danielson?
Yeah, just to add to the comment that you made about the service delivery project that's underway, the steering committee has had an initial look at the first draft of it, and you can see that there are going to be some overlapping items. There will be some impacts on our discussions or considerations at the very least. So I think it's important that document become public and there to be a discussion take place about it before we make too many large decisions.
Mm-hmm. Especially if there's going to be those impacts. Jeannie, where are we with the asset management plan? Sorry to drop a bomb on you there, but
we spoke with him a couple of weeks back, and I believe Chris has now gone out with the engineers on the docks and landings. So we should hear back from them within the next week or so with some more of a draft for us to review, is my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge step forward for a whole new way of conducting business, and it's a vital piece of our decision-making process. So we'll certainly look forward to that, and that might be something as well that we have a special meeting to discuss, because it's going to be a big document. So we'll wait with bated breath for that document, which is also delayed. I think we do have to acknowledge, which we are, there are a number of delays based on things that are just simply out of our control at the moment. And we'll have to, I think, remain flexible to pick up these conversations when the opportunity arises. And I think that's what folks are asking for, is let's stay as flexible as we can as the situation changes, so we can continue to do what we need to do but still have regard for the overall situation. Anything else on this very fulsome conversation about budget impacts at the moment? We've got lots to circle back on, which is good. So there's lots of notes there. Anybody else want to say anything at the moment? No. don't see any hands in the air. Okay. Could I have a mover and a seconder to accept this report? Wait, I have to go back to my council screen here. Councillor Dayu and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, seconded by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, the council receives Treasury Report TT 1020 regarding COVID-19 offsetting budget impacts for information submitted by Jean Hughes dated June 9th, 2020. Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
And Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. And with an eye to the time and looking for just a little bit of a break, I think we'll just finish up with the treasurer for the accounts payable, which is the last item. I think I thank the department heads for being brought in, and we can release them at this time, except for the treasurer, I think. Thanks, everybody. You'll see their smiling faces again soon. Any questions on the accounts payable? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder to accept that report? Councillor Berry, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that council has reviewed the expenditures incurred as set out in the June 18th, 2020 account summary in the total amount of $386,965.22 and hereby approves payment as same. Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
That's carried. Okay, I'm going to call for a break, and my computer says 10:21, so we'll take 10 minutes. Is that okay for everybody?
Sure.
Thank you, everyone.
We'll see you back here shortly. Thank you, Jeannie. Okay, welcome back, members of council and staff. We'll reconvene with item number 7, building and bylaw enforcement business. And Mr. Rogers is with us on the screen. Welcome, David.
Again, council, I didn't know if you wanted me to speak to the 2 bylaw reports as one or do them separately.
Well, one's from March, so to be honest, I'm not sure with all that's gone on if that matters so much. But does anybody have any questions of David from his April monthly activities? There is none. So I'll have are they together, Madam Clerk, or are they separate?
March and April are together.
Right. So could I have a mover and a seconder to accept the March and April monthly activities? Councillor Dayu and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, seconded by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, Council receives building bylaw report BLDG 520 regarding monthly activities for the months of March and April 2020, submitted by Greg Moore, dated June 18th, 2020. Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. Next up, David, is your May activities. Are there any questions of anything specific on this report of David from council? David, anything you want to highlight for council?
Just at that point, that's when we are allowed to actually start issuing building permits again. So we are issuing permits and we're getting lots more inquiries. I'm still certain that part of the COVID is affecting our permit issuing because people aren't working. So our permit totals are down from previous years. So hopefully that'll pick up as things get back to normal.
Great. Thank you for that. Anything further on this report from council? Can I have a mover and a seconder to accept this report? Councillor Berry, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives building bylaw report BLDG 620 regarding May 2020 monthly activities, submitted by David Rogers, dated June 18th, 2020. Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. And lastly for you, David, is your verbal report on the appointment of building inspectors for the septic reinspection program.
Again, through you, Mayor, we need to make the appointment. These are the that will be carrying out the inspection program for this year, and WSP has provided the list of names, so we just need to appoint them as the inspectors.
So really just a piece of housekeeping. Could I have a mover and a seconder for this appointment? Deputy Mayor Danielson, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council acknowledge a verbal report from David Rogers regarding the appointment of building inspectors for sewage systems related to the septic reinspection program and directs a bylaw be brought forward for the appointments. Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Mayor.
Parks, Rec and Trails business is next, so we'll bring in Mr. Card. Welcome back, Chris.
It's good to be back.
You didn't go anywhere. A couple of things for you. First up is a verbal report on the hydro connection for the museum expansion in Dorset.
Yeah, so there's a few housekeeping items in the form of agreements needing bylaws associated with them for signature. This one's in association with the Dorset Museum Expansion Project. This just is the technical process to allow us to work with hydro to do disconnects and reconnects, essentially.
Any questions of council on this requirement? May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Dayu, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, Council receives the basic connection agreement and directs a bylaw be brought forward authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign said agreement between the corporation of the Township of Algonquin Highlands and Hydro One related to the Dorset Museum project. Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
And Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. Next up is similarly the agreement with Quinnen for the museum addition project. Did you need to speak to that, Chris?
No, this is a standard pricing stipulation contract associated with the project. And again, just a bylaw associated with allowing us to sign that agreement.
Any questions from council on this? May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Berry, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives the agreement related to the museum addition project and directs a bylaw be brought forward authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign this said agreement between the corporation of the Township of Algonquin Highlands and Quinton Construction. Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. And finally, with the agreements is the Fowler construction for the boat ramp. Any questions of council on this? May I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Dayu, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, Council receives the agreement related to the rehabilitation of the Clinton Lake boat ramp and directs a bylaw be brought forward authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign a said agreement between the corporation of the Township of Algonquin Highlands and Fowler Construction Company. Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
And Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you. The next item is mine. As folks know, we have a shared services agreement with our neighbors
Monthly activity.
in Lake of Bays. Oh, let's go back to the monthly activities. Item D, monthly activities. Chris, anything you want to highlight in this busy time?
No, a general update is that we're starting to get back to being able to have some operations in place based on the COVID restrictions. Campsites have been able to open as of Monday of this week, and we're getting staff back in place associated with that. We're about 5 weeks behind as far as staffing and work goes on that, but moving that forward. Tower remains closed, recreation centers remain closed. However, we've been able to continue with some planned work at those locations, and we've had some great success with developing some online programming as those efforts. Just moving ahead with being able to get things operating as restrictions are changed over time.
Yeah, and I think the online programming is fairly exciting and could usher in a new day of offering opportunities for keeping people healthy and active from their homes. I note in your report of interest, which is the reason for our long discussion previously, is the water trails revenue is down 45%. So that's a big deal for us overall in terms of revenues. Any questions of council on anything in Chris's report? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that Council receives report PRT 820 regarding monthly activities submitted by Chris Carr dated June 18th, 2020. Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
And Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. Okay, we'll circle back to the shared services discussion around the agreement. So I'll just pick up. We have a shared services agreement with Lake of Bays. A number of items are contained in a legally binding agreement for the sharing of certain services and costs attached thereto. I meet regularly with Lake of Bays Mayor Terry Glover. One of the things that came up it was actually our March, I'm looking at my own notes, March 10th meeting. We explored a number of items, and one of them was that there's an expired resolution for each township to make annual reserve contributions. It was over a 5-year period, and that agreement has expired. So Mayor Glover and I agreed that Algonquin Highlands would craft a new resolution for review by Lake of Bays to renew that agreement for the contributions to those reserves. And then Algonquin Highlands would make a formal send that resolution and make the formal request through Lake Bay's Council to sort of repopulate those reserves. And the clerk is going to remind me the rink reserve is $2,500 per municipality per year, and the Raven Lake Landing reserve contributions per municipality is $2,000. And that will, we were hoping that Mayor Glover and I had agreed that we would try and float this agreement being in perpetuity, but we can't bind a future council. So we'll have to wait and see what time frame they want to do it in.
They would keep going until it was revisited.
Okay, so can we do it in perpetuity,
You
or
just pass it as is, and then
okay,
was
and
to
then
be revisited in
when
future,
right? Okay.
one of the mayors or the council.
All right, and just additionally to that, because we do know we have some dock work that needs to be done at Raven Lake, that the agreement was also that Algonquin Highlands will make a formal request to Lake of Bays later this year for capital contributions to the Raven Lake dock. So that's what Mayor Glover and I had agreed to bring forward. So I'm just asking council for support for that resolution to go to Lake of Bays to formalize, to renew this agreement so that we can continue that joint work on those two, on the Raven Lake Landing and the rink project. Any questions of council on that? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder for that resolution? Councillor Short-Reed. Oh, sorry, hang on. Deputy Mayor Danielson has a question.
I just wondered if the amounts for each of the agreements is sustainable, reasonable, if we should be considering increasing them a little bit.
I don't, we could ask for consideration of a larger amount going forward. We would have to consider that ourselves for our own budget purposes. And I don't know if, I mean, we could, but that's not what Mayor Glover and I had agreed. So I don't know if it's fair to suddenly drop a higher amount, but we can, I mean, we can ask them. But remember, that means it would have to come back for formalization through resolution again.
If I could ask, how long have those amounts been in place?
Yeah, I don't know. Madam CAO, do you recall how long those amounts have been in place?
Not for sure. The rink one, it's expired in 5 years. So it's been at least 5 years. Raven Lake Landing, I know, was prior to that because it was capped at a 12,000 maximum. So
okay.
Yeah.
Chris, do you know by chance?
Dawn, was that original agreement from 2012? Do you have a date on that? Okay, then no, sorry, I don't.
Okay. So what would council like to do? The verbal arrangement for crafting the resolution to renew the contract or the agreement was based on 2,500 and 2,000 for each of the reserves. The deputy mayor has suggested asking for a larger amount, but it's a larger amount for us to contribute as well. Do you want to do that or just leave it as is? Deputy Mayor Danielson has her hand up again.
Well, I don't want to really see us delay, and you make a point about that you and Mayor Glover have come to an agreement on that, but I think it's something that we need to think about in the future. That you know, these agreements, that things cost far more money than they did even 5 years ago. So, you know, we're going to have to consider that.
Mm-hmm. So maybe then maybe what we do is the wording of the resolution we could add a piece of crafted language, because we don't scribble, is to say that the amounts can be reviewed annually. We could go with that, and that leaves the door open for your purposes, Liz, to say that as Chris comes to us with greater, with the projects that need doing, we might need a little bit more. And we can always ask. We can always get yes, and we can always get no.
Yeah.
Councillor Barry, I see your hand.
Just wondering how this works with our larger discussion on docks and landings. If we're putting a reserve, committing to a reserve to one docks and like one area, how does that fall?
Well, we have a docks and landings reserve. This is just to ask, this is for Lake of Bays to share in that particular reserve, because the landing is, serves people in both Lake of Bays and Algonquin Highlands. So it's a shared asset.
Okay.
Chris, did you want to add something there?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that this past Monday, Tuesday, I had been doing site visits with the contracted consultant working on our asset management planning. So we have now visited all of the landing locations, and that information as far as long-term asset management plans and costs associated with them will be developed subsequent to that. So we've had the meetings, and we'll be just awaiting the reporting from them.
Yeah, and then to that end, Lisa, and I think Liz as well, is we could, once again, we've got these pieces that are floating around yet that we haven't tied to the ground. So we get the asset management plan, and some of those costs are projected. It could be an opportunity. The language in the resolution for support is that it's reviewed annually. The timing could fall that we ask Lake of Bays and ourselves to put more in based on what we find out. At least this is the just the start to renew that agreement, and let's just make sure that it remains a little bit flexible. Because you're right, things are not getting any cheaper. There is more and more pressures for a long list of pent-up capital demands and projects that need doing, and they all cost more money than they ever used to. So it's reasonable and likely that we would have to make that request. But I can continue to talk to Mayor Glover about that in our ongoing conversations. Madam Clerk, where are we? Do I need a mover?
A second. Yep.
I would like a mover and a seconder for this resolution. Councillor Short-Reed and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved that the Township of Algonquin Highlands and the Township of Lake of Bays have executed a shared service agreement for the purpose of financial contribution for shared premises and facilities that each township's ratepayer utilize, and that the Township of Algonquin Highlands and the Township of Lake of Bays previously contribute to a joint reserve for the Raven Lake Landing in the amount of $2,000 and the Dorset Rink in the amount of $2,500, and further that the Council of the Township of Algonquin Highlands wishes to continue with the annual contributions to the Dorset Rink and Raven Lake Landing reserves, and request that the Township of Lake of Bays contribute equally to the reserves annually in the amount of $2,000 towards the Raven Lake Landing and $2,500 to the Dorset Rink, and further that the reserve amounts be reviewed annually by both townships. Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Barry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Short-Reed, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you for that. And thank you, Mr. Card.
Thank you.
Next up is Public Works Business, and we'll bring Mr. Thorne in. Welcome back, Adam.
Thank you.
I've got a number of reports here. First is your report on the road grader.
Yes, unfortunately, after 33 years of service with us, sad to see the old girl have to go down the road. So yeah, it was a pretty substantial breakdown, and given the age of the equipment, I don't feel that this would be necessary to fix, and as the recommendation would be to surplus the equipment.
Let's not say the old girl anymore.
It's an equipment term.
I know. So your recommendation is to surplus that piece of equipment and then rent. as opposed to purchasing?
That's correct. The purchase of a new grader is in the neighborhood of $500,000. And because we have a second grader that's still has a lot of life left in it, I feel that through conversation with both area supervisors, that we can utilize the one grader between the 2 yards. And our busiest time of year generally is the spring, where we're getting ready for our summertime roads and also our calcium application, which typically takes place in between May and the end of June. So if we feel that we cannot perform the duties at both ends of the locations here, then we'd like to request the rental of a piece of equipment to come in and help offset so that the equipment can be utilized. Council may remember back in 2019, we did purchase a new tandem dump truck for the North Shore Road yard. And that was in response to lifting some of the workload off of a $500,000 piece of equipment that we're operating just like a piece of equipment like one of our other tandem trucks. So to help extend the life of the machine, this will be able to move up and help out in the other areas.
And are you suggesting that the equipment only be rented for the particular projects for which it's needed, or are we renting in the short term and continuing to contribute to a reserve for an eventual capital replacement? What's your long-term thought on it? Just rent as you go?
I'm sorry, it was a little broke up there, but I think, I think what you were looking for is that my proposal would be to rent the machine for the month of May to help us get prepped for the summer roads and calcium application. And then the grader, the Volvo grader currently in our fleet would maintain the rest of the year. Now, that's without saying if something should happen like a storm or something that we have no control over, potentially we may have to rent one, but as of right now, I feel we can handle what we with what we have.
It seems very strange to me that we're sitting in the same building and you're breaking up over the internet. But anyway, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I just wondered about who, I know that it's an operational question, but who you would rent a grader from, and if there's any savings in renting it for a little bit longer periods of time, and who's responsible for the maintenance.
So, sorry. So yes, there are multiple companies out there that do rent graders. Actually, I was speaking with one this morning about it. 3 that I know of off the top of my head, and the rates vary. The rates vary depending on the year as well. Through the winter months, you can get them cheaper than in the summertime. And then when it comes to maintenance, the agreement I would bring forward would have to be that we only provide daily maintenance and fuel into the machine. Everything else is provided by the company we rent it from.
And there's no issue with availability?
The company I spoke to at the first, when this report was drafted up, was no, there is no issue with availability. We would prepare that, so we would be letting the company know well in advance that we would require a grader, and that would be that typical May, potentially May, maybe into June type scenario, where if it's middle of the summer and a big storm comes in and we need a second grader, then we could be held to the availability of a machine.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Just one other point, because we mentioned it earlier about the shared services agreement. It's probably a good idea for us not to buy another piece of large equipment for a value like that until we kind of know how the dust is going to settle in that respect.
Oh, for the service delivery review. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Councillor Dayu?
Adam, this surplusing would have shown up in the asset management plan, would it not?
The grader was captured in the asset management plan, but it wouldn't show up as a surplus, because when the asset management plan was done for fleet, at that time, we did not know, or the breakdown hadn't taken place yet. So it will be updated.
Okay, I guess that's very helpful. I think and I'm speaking to the air in the chair here. This is not in any way a comment on Public Works or at all, but it's one of those moments when I kind of feel frustrated that we still don't have that asset management plan in place, because it's hard to see this in the context of everything else that that we need to plan for and budget for. And I'm aware, again, speaking to the air in the chair, I'm aware that we were hoping to have the asset management plan by March, and that was sort of before COVID hit. So while there's a certain degree of understanding as to why it's taking the contractors longer to put it together, I guess I'm just like to express my frustration that we still don't have it, considering we should have had it before COVID, because it would have been so great to have that document in front of me when I was reading Adam's report to sort of see how it fits in. End of rant.
I think we would all concur. It is a challenge, and I know that the CAO is going to enlighten us as to why we are still where we are.
Yes, and we are equally as frustrated, and we have expressed that. The consultant has had some challenges with a sub-consultant that they are using with respect to the docks and landings work. Winter set in before they could get that work done, so it put them behind, and now COVID put them even further behind. So. But we are pushing them as hard as we possibly can. We want it, I mean, staff need it as well, so.
Okay, well, we'll leave that at that. And so the request of council is to not purchase a $500,000 grader and rent for the time it's needed. So is that, we seeing support for that? May I have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillor Shortreed, Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of Public Works Report PW 2620 regarding the 1987 Champion Road Grader submitted by Adam Thorne dated June 18th, 2020, and that council hereby concurs with the recommendations made in the said report and selects option 2 to surplus the 1987 Champion Road Grader through GovDeal, and to include the rental of a road grader in the 2021 budget for the preparation of opening seasonal roads and calcium application with an estimated 1-month rental rate at $6,500 per month. Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Nope, she's there, and I heard yes. It was a bit shaggy, but I heard yes.
Deputy Mayor Dennison, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
That's carried.
We are. There are some internet challenges, and that's with our. Yeah, I keep getting a note on my screen that says internet is unstable. So, and that's with the alleged 100 meg up and down county project. No offense to the county. Right, next is the library accessibility project. Adam, tell us our sad story there.
The sad story is, unfortunately, it did come in over budget, and it did only receive one bid. I strongly feel that this is a result of, we did put it out prior to COVID, but unfortunately it was right in the height of COVID. So I would like to think that that is contributing factors. There were so many unknowns for contractors of, coming out to sites and what was going on with the world. So My fingers are crossed that's the reason for only one bid. We did have two contractors show up. However, we did only receive one bid. So as the report states, I guess we have two options here. And I feel that if we went back out again, potentially we might get a better result now that the world is getting back moving again. We might see some better results with bids, and we could potentially see a lower cost, but that is definitely unknown.
Thoughts from Councillor Dayu?
Yeah, I would hope so too. But if I think back to the Dorset Museum project, recent evidence suggests that, multiple bids do not necessarily help us to come in under budget. And with that recent history in mind, I'm kind of on the fence as to whether we should just plow on and accept that this is going to be how it's going to be, or put it back out there again. So happy to, looking forward to hearing what the other councillors have to say, but I'm kind of thinking, let's just get on and get her done.
Councillor Barry?
I support going it back out to tender. I think it's not just a few $100s over budget. It's quite a bit. I'd like to see it go out to tender. There's no urgency, so that's where I stand.
Thoughts from Deputy Mayor Danielson?
My only concern would be, I had kind of mixed feelings about this, okay, let's just plow ahead. We don't always get a lot of tenders for these projects. But either way, I just want to know that you believe that there's sufficient time to retender it and get the work done before November the 30th. Adam.
So when I was speaking to the contractor that did bid on it, their major concern was the purchase and ordering of the lift itself. That is the biggest struggle. That's what's going to take the longest time to get to us. So I guess we could say that if we pushed forward with the project as it is now, it would take a couple weeks to have that product brought in. They could get started potentially on the project, all the prep work, and have that organized. So whether the project was to push forward with the current bid or we retender, I would still recommend that as much work get done on the building prior to the lift showing up. The engineer has given us all the drawings, the diagrams, everything required for the building renovation. So if we do tender and we do give the bid to award the bid to a contractor, like I said, I would push for as much building work to be done as possible, so that we're not waiting for that lift to show up and then starting the work. So at the end of the day, to answer your question, it will be the lift that holds us back, but I'm pretty confident that we would be able to have that completed in the time frame.
Oh, sorry.
Is there any way that we can order the lift and retender?
I suppose we could. I would have to talk to the CAO about that to see if that's an option.
Liz, did you have something else you wanted to say there?
I did.
But it's gone, right?
Oh, I know. Sorry. I'm sure that we included the electrical panel and the ability. We did, didn't we?
Yes, we sure did. That was definitely in there. It's in the new drawings, and I made a special point to that when I was speaking to the contractor and the engineer about it. Yes.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I struggle with this as well. I mean, this is on the heels of an extremely long conversation we just had about potential revenue losses and other capital projects that may get suspended or in other ways deferred. And I struggle with pushing ahead with a $21,000 overage, but we are up against some timelines. But I support us going back out. Just to see what else is out there. With an eye, certainly what Councillor Dayu said, we do know that we found this over the last few years that tendering projects does not necessarily a lower price make. So we are taking a bit of a chance, but perhaps with the industry opening up a little bit with the provincial restrictions being lifted, we might see some more action on it. But I haven't heard yet from Councillor Shortreed.
I'm sorry, I just keep getting some interference, but I agree with going out for a second tender.
Okay. That's what we're doing then. That would be 3. At least, or maybe 4. And some fence sitting. So may I have anything else you want to talk about on this? Other than fingers crossed for a little more interest in this important project. Libraries are closed at the moment, so as was mentioned previously by I'm not sure who, there's certainly isn't a huge rush at the moment. Angie?
I just wonder, just around timelines for council's information, Adam, like you'd go back out and have a fairly quick turnaround, probably 2 or 3 weeks, right?
Yes, my plan was to discuss it further with you, Angie, but the tender's ready. Just changing dates, essentially. The information was there, so there was no addendas or anything. So we can just turn that around next week and get it sent out. And yes, we could plan on a shorter time frame, and then get that back to us as soon as possible. And then a very, very strict cutoff date for completion.
Okay, is that amenable to all?
Yes.
May I have a mover and a seconder? Lisa, sorry, Lisa, did you have something to say or were you making the motion?
No, I was just wondering, is there, if I just know how long things are taking to be delivered and the mail and UPS and all of that. Is there any benefit in ordering the lift? Like, I can't think of there being that many manufacturers. Like, is there an advantage to ordering the lift so that you're just tendering out the work?
Adam?
Save time?
Sorry, I seen Angie's hand up there. I didn't know if she wanted to speak to someone. My screen froze too, so.
Angie, did you want to speak to that?
That would be something I'd want to ask the lawyer. First thought for me would be, I wouldn't want the township to take on that responsibility of the lift itself. Any defects or anything, you want that to be the responsibility of the contractor. So, for the matter of a couple of weeks, I wouldn't think that we would take that on, but it would be something that we could ask the lawyer for sure.
Adam, go ahead, please.
Also, just for clarification, we actually specify a specific lift through the engineer drawings. So it's not like the contractor has to go to 5 different companies for potential cost of the item. So it's one item, it's specified unit number, and just to make that very easy for the contractor. So that's where the engineer drawings came in based on that unit as well.
So would council be satisfied if we left it with Adam and Angie to check on that, and then they've heard what council's interested. I think if the rest of council is interested in Councillor Barry's suggestion, if there's any efficiencies to be found in splitting the project, we can leave it to staff to make those inquiries and then move ahead with the tender the way it looks, depending on what legal says. Would that be agreeable? Deputy Mayor Danielson?
It would be agreeable, but there's also the risk that it would make the project overall more expensive. If we buy the lift and they're only bidding on the work, it might lead them to bump the price up a little bit more.
Right. So then again, I would circle back to Angie and Adam have heard the comments and thoughts from council, and perhaps we can leave it with them to determine the best outcome based on what they've heard from council and what they will hear from legal or further discussions about how the project might unfold, rather than make them come back with another report that would just further delay the project. So would that be okay with council to just leave it with them, having heard what council's interested in seeing or doing, and just let them carry it forward from here?
Yes.
Okay, I'm hearing and seeing yes.
To reissue the tender.
It's to reissue, and then there'll be some internal conversations just to clarify, see if there's any advantages or efficiencies in the suggestion of getting the lift separately, or if it's actually a red flag in terms of maintenance and responsibility. May I have a mover and a seconder for this project? Councillor Dayu and Councillor Berry.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Berry. Be it resolved, council acknowledge receipt of report of Public Works Report PW 2720 regarding the Stanhope Library accessibility renovation tender results submitted by Adam Thorne dated June 18th, 2020, and that council hereby concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and selects option 2 to reissue the tender, and the council directs the amending funding agreement to extend the project deadline be brought forward for execution at the next meeting of council, and the council hereby authorizes the mayor and clerk to sign the said agreement. Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dennison, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you for that. Next up for you, Adam, is the guide rail repairs, the dreaded guide rails.
Yes. I've received quite a few calls on this. It's unfortunate. We replaced them in the fall, and then they were unfortunately had some damage caused to them over the winter. But yes, the company that did install them, I would like to request that I have that same company come back and make the repairs. Basically, it will be a full replacement of the one side.
Yeah, it is tremendously unfortunate, and as noted, we knew this, and as noted in your report, it's the GPS, and I can tell you there's been a number of times I travel that route an awful lot for personal purposes, and the number of times you're following a truck that's way too big going down that road and trying to turn at St. Peter's, and we had spoken a little bit about this, about some additional signage as well, and not that we want to add any more sign pollution to our countryside, but to encourage trucks to continue on to Airport Road. But I mean, we don't really even want them on there. And I did ask, as you've noted in your report as well, that with the county going with the municipal 511, we will be allowed to put a caution on that system so it'll turn up for truckers so they don't veer off the highway and wander down the side roads. Thoughts from council? Anybody? Just go ahead.
Mhm.
Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder for the guide rail repairs? Councillor Berry, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the council acknowledges receipt of Public Works Report PW 2820 regarding the guide rail repairs submitted by Adam Thorne dated June 18th, 2020. And the council hereby concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and authorizes staff to proceed with a single source procurement of this project at an estimated cost of $11,000 plus applicable tax. And further, council directs that this project be funded from reserves. Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dennison, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
And Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. Next up is the tender results for the bulk propane, and here we have 4 bidders, which is nice. Take it away, Adam, for us.
So this is another project that I was happy to work with the county on, as well as Minden Hills. So we put together the tender, we worked together on it and submitted it, and the bid results came back as the table shows. As the report states, I would like to continue with our current provider, and just looking for council's approval.
Any questions of council on this process? I'm certainly glad to see the collaborative work with the other 2 municipalities. That's nice to see. Anybody? Okay, may I have a mover and a seconder for this report? Everybody's frozen.
We've all got our hands up.
Everybody's on my screen. Everyone's frozen.
Not on my screen, Mayor Muffet.
I see Lisa Berry's hand up.
Yeah.
And Councillor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Berry, seconded by Councillor Dayu. Be it resolved that council acknowledge receipt of Public Works Report PW 2920 regarding tender results, the supply and delivery of bulk propane submitted by Adam Thorne dated June 18th, 2020. And the council hereby concurs with the recommendation made in the said report and accepts the tender bid for More Propane Limited for the supply and delivery of propane at all locations in the township at a bid price of 0.3510 per liter, including applicable tax plus $6 per delivery. And further, the council hereby directs a bylaw be brought forward authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the said agreement between the corporation of the Township of Algonquin Highlands and More Propane. Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you. Next up is the tipping fees. This is the most awaited report, I think, on the planet. Abby, you want to take us through this report?
Yes. So, as you know, all of our landfill sites are still open, still operating. However, we have had a reduced service to only accept household waste and recycling and not to accept any chargeable materials being brought in. What we are proposing was the digital payment system that will allow us to take basically credit card, debit payments in that form. Just a couple housekeeping items that I would just like to address, and I apologize for them, is in the recommendations at the bottom, in the second paragraph, there is the word or, it should be and. So council supports council supports digital payments and commercial charge accounts. In the third paragraph, council supports the use of commercial charge accounts.
Mr. Thorne has frozen. Everybody's frozen. So we'll just have a moment to relax until the connection catches up to us. And
in the fourth paragraph, instead of also there is an addition to a recommendation, which says, and that council concurs with the recommendation made in the said report that no cash will be accepted at any of its landfills and transfer stations until such time staff reports back to council for further consideration being lifted. And the last housekeeping item is the last paragraph, and further that council directs the amended bylaw be tabled for further discussion or further consideration. Again, I apologize for the housekeeping. If there's any questions regarding the housekeeping, I could answer them now, and then if I can continue on.
So we'll just hang on for a second, Adam, while you were outlining your changes in verbiage. You froze, everybody froze a couple of times, and I think I'm frozen right now. And so I didn't hear much of what you said. I know what it's supposed to say because I was scribbling a little bit. So I can see that I'm now back on the screen. Adam's moving. Who's moving? Jen's moving. Okay, we're all back. So I see hands. Good. So Jen, you have a question? Councillor Dayu?
Yes, it was just to say that I don't feel that I heard enough about what Adam was saying to be able to respond, sadly. If he could try again.
Yeah, so Adam, could you just take us through those, and between each one just stop so we can make sure that everybody has heard, because we seem to be having some really unstable internet challenges at the moment.
Of course. And what I'll do is I'll just start again about the housekeeping items in the recommendations.
Yes, please start again.
Okay. So the first housekeeping item is the second paragraph in the resolution, and that council supports digital payments, and instead of the word being or, it should have been and.
So did everybody hear that?
Is everybody okay with that one?
Did everybody hear that? And are you okay with that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, I'm hearing that. Okay, Adam, carry on to your second one.
Okay, so the second housekeeping item is the third paragraph, and that council supports the use of commercial charge account.
Right.
We needed to clarify that these are commercial charge accounts.
Right.
Okay, did everybody hear that clearly and understand what it means?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Adam, carry on.
In the fourth paragraph, customer should be removed and commercial charge account be added. At the very bottom, patrons should be removed and commercial charge account holders with charge accounts in good standing.
Did everybody hear that clearly and understand what it means?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, so that Adam's right. It's just a little bit of housekeeping just to ensure that when I first read it, I said, oh, does that mean I can get an account? And so the charge accounts are for contractors, they're commercial purposes only. Adam, did you want to add something?
Yes, so there's just two more changes.
Okay.
I apologize again, sorry. The second last change here is a whole new paragraph that says, and that council concurs with the recommendations made in the said report that no cash will be accepted at any of its landfills and transfer stations until such time staff reports back to council for further consideration following the township's emergency declaration being lifted.
Right, and so there's two issues here. First of all, we need, council voted to implement the Square tap to pay system. The bylaw needs to be amended in that regard anyway. Secondarily is the recommendation to not accept cash during the declared emergency. So that's the last paragraph that has been added, and I would suspect that that's the part that might generate the most discussion. So looking for thoughts from council. Everybody's frozen again. Oh, you're all back. Thoughts from council on the proposed changes as regards the bylaw around cashless systems. Councillor Dayu.
So for our viewers at home and also for us, now that we're taking these changes, these housekeeping changes in, could you just describe in layman's terms what it's going to look like? What are you proposing? Just could you summarize it just so that I'm sure that I understand what these changes sum up to, and our listening viewers as well?
Sure. So with the introduction of Square Terminal digital payment device, we will have a device that will be on site for any site user that brings in a chargeable material will be able to swipe their debit card, tap their debit card, or credit card. Yeah. And what that'll allow is that the attendant will have the ability to hold that out at a distance. If it's a tap and go, you just set your card on it as you would at the grocery store and you carry on through the site. There's no touching of anything. Should you have to put in a PIN number, our attendants are wearing PPE and cleaning the device, which actually sits in a bit of a cradle, a safety cradle. So it allows us to continually monitor and clean the device so that we can ensure safety of our site users and our site staff.
So I don't know, Adam, if you can hear me or not, but you're frozen again, and stop talking because we can't hear you. Well, he could. Yeah, go. Can you, if anybody out there in the world can hear me, we are going to ask Adam to leave his office and come into the council chambers at a safe distance and try and speak into the general microphone. Did everybody catch that?
Yep.
Yes.
That's appreciated.
Yes.
So we'll just sing yourself a little song while we just move some chairs around to ensure that Adam is maintains distancing from the other two staff members who are. Go sit over there somewhere. You're not on camera. It's just voice.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so are we back? Is everybody feeling that we're okay now with the internet stability?
So far, so good.
Yep.
Yep.
So do you want to summarize again? So what it is anybody can come in and tap and pay touchless, keeping the public and staff separated. So as I've said, there's two things. Because we agreed to adopt the touchless system, we need to amend the bylaw anyway. So that's one piece of it. The second piece is that Adam is recommending that during the course of the declared emergency, council consider not accepting cash and reconsider that once the declared emergency is over. And that there may be an inconvenience to well, we don't know. I believe there are probably some people in the world that maybe still live in a cash system, but the majority of people probably have a debit card. It is a bit of an awkward situation. I don't know what your plan would be if someone comes and says, I don't have a credit card or a debit card. But it would, anywhere you go right now, I'm finding that they have signs, most people have signs in their windows saying we prefer debit or credit as opposed to cash at the moment. Does that summarize sort of what you're?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So what are council's thoughts on that? Lisa Berry.
I support the direction. I think it's been clarified that this is during the emergency measures, and that we will revisit cash after that. If that is the direction, I support that.
Madam CAO?
Just to clarify that, there may be, depending on what the province decides to do with the emergency, there may be a gap in that time. So if council directs that Adam bring it back to the July meeting, once he's had opportunity to evaluate it, the emergency may be lifted by then. But just so council's aware, there may not, but there might be a gap in that time frame.
I believe there was a discussion being tabled today to extend the emergency orders to the end of July. Yeah. So I would think that Adam has just suggested that he would aim for the August meeting, and I think the notwithstanding clause therein would be if there's any issue that is raised that is big enough that he'd bring it back anyway.
Right.
And we would rely on staff's, the good judgment of staff to do that for us and make sure that people are as well served as they can be. And I have to say that I have, and I've said this on all our EOC meetings, have received a tremendous number of more discussion with taxpayers in the last couple of months than ever. And the vast majority of the concerns are about the landfills, and specifically, I think I said this in the last meeting, the metal pile. And a lot of people are, pretty frustrated that they have construction projects and they have bags of insulation and drywall and Tyvek and whatever it is they need to get rid of. And I have a construction project going on myself, so I also have all those things that need to go to the landfill. So I'm anxious that be opened. My concern would be that we put the restrictions in the landfill to eliminate the use of cash. If we were now to decide that no, we were still going to accept cash, I, as one taxpayer, would be really annoyed that I had to hold on to all my construction waste for 3 months because we're still going to accept cash. So I certainly support it as a trial run and see how far we get. So I've heard from Councillor Berry. Anybody else would like to weigh in? Councillor Dayu.
Yeah, I support it very much too. I like the fact that we can review the question of cash at a future date when we've got more information and clarity. My question to Adam would be, so once, presuming council says yes to all of this, and once that starts up, would there be any remaining restrictions on landfill use that we would still have to think through in the future and communicate to our constituents, or would that be it?
As far as accepting chargeable materials, we are fully expecting to go back into full usage of our landfill sites. We are going to be opening up a site, and then we'll be working away on it, and we'll be discussing it with the EOC group as well. And we'll be having to plan and assess as we go forward. This is a new system for us, and we do have some challenges ahead of us. So we want to make sure that when we roll this out, we have everything necessary to move forward with it.
Yeah, there'll be there are plans once the trial run is organized and that it's working as well as it possibly can. The listening public, the landfill should be shortly. I think the best time frame we can say is we're excited to say that landfill operations will resume shortly, but that date has not yet been announced. I'm going to be first in the line with my bags of insulation. Okay, so I'm hearing support, and we'll just keep an eye on it. You'll monitor it as you do with Melissa and others, and we'll keep an eye on it. Let's get those landfills back open, because people are grumpy, understandably, and I like the fact that we're embracing some more technology and finding different ways to undertake business. So that's good. Any hands in the air there? May I have a mover and a seconder to accept this report with its modifications? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, Council acknowledge receipt of Public Works Report PW 3020 regarding payment of tipping fees at waste disposal sites, and that Council supports digital payments and commercial charge accounts for collection of tipping fees at Maple Lake, Dorset Transfer Station, and Oxton Lake waste disposal sites, and that Council supports the use of commercial charge accounts only for collection of tipping fees at Pine Springs and Hawk Lake waste disposal sites, and that Council supports the amendment of bylaw 2012-15 section 0.3 to read as the fees and charges imposed by this bylaw can be paid by digital payment, debit, credit card, or on account if a commercial charge account has been authorized by the Township pursuant to Schedule I attached here too, and that the addition of section 6.7 to bylaw 2012-15 to read as where or if digital payment systems are not available, chargeable materials will only be accepted from commercial charge account holders with a charge account in good standing, and that Council concurs with the recommendation made in the said report that no cash will be accepted at any of its landfills and transfer stations until such time staff reports back to Council for further consideration following the Township's emergency declaration being lifted, and further that Council directs the amending bylaw be tabled for further consideration. Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
That's carried.
Okay, thank you for that, and thank you for the patience from our unstable internet. And finally, for you, Adam, is the May fuel report. Are there any questions about the May fuel report from Council? May I have a mover and a seconder to accept this report? Councillor Berry and Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives report AP 620 regarding May fuel 2020 fuel usage submitted by Adam Thorne dated June 18th, 2020. Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Thorne.
Thank you.
In case you can't see Adam, he's wearing a very beautiful deep purple jacket today. Mr. Thorne's a bit of a dandy. That's not an insult. Next up is fire services business, so we'll just take a moment to bring the fire chief in. Welcome back, chief.
Good morning.
You need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
A couple of things for you. I guess just monthly activities. So talk to us about those things.
Well, May obviously wasn't a typical month with the COVID-19 restrictions. We didn't have training, and that's one of the. I'm glad that we've started training now in June, and I can get out and meet some of the firefighters. We're also starting to issue burn permits.
Yeah, things a little bit back to some normalcy, which is good. Are these, Madam Clerk, are these separate resolutions, or are they all one? It's just one. It's all one. Okay. Are there any questions from council of the chief on the monthly activities and getting back to business? Okay, then we've got I guess we can just have a look at the Wi-Fi. The stats are there. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts on that? Still lots of activity. And the May stats. Chief, did you want to speak to the stats, or you mentioned earlier that call volumes were down?
So the call volume is down, and what you're seeing there is just a variety of different type of calls. We had some CO calls, some burn complaints, but no major calls.
Mm-hmm. And overall, you're satisfied that fire services are managing well through the pandemic with all their PPE requirements and whatnot?
We are. Yes, we've got all our procedures in place, and we haven't lost any staff throughout the last 3 months.
That's great. Are there any questions of the fire chief on any of these reports? Okay, may I have a mover and a seconder to accept this report? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, Council receives Fire Services Report FD 1020 regarding May 2020 monthly activities submitted by Jonathan Wilker, dated June 18th, 2020. And further, the Council accepts with regret Tanner Pekarski's resignation from the Algonquin Highlands Fire Service. Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
And Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
It's carried.
Thank you, Chief. That was short and sweet.
Thank you.
See you again. Next up is there is no administration business. Planning is next, and so we will bring in Mr. O'Callaghan. Welcome back, Sean.
Yes, thank you.
A couple of files for you. First up is a shore road allowance closing on Cushog Lake.
Yeah, this proposal is to close the shore road allowance in front of this property. It's currently a vacant piece of land, but there are, my understanding is they are looking to develop it and close the shore road allowance. So I would recommend proceeding through the regular process for that.
Any questions from council on this? Okay, may I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor sorry, my apologies. Councillor Dayu and Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Deputy Mayor Danielson. Be it resolved, Council hereby approves in principle an application made to stop, upclose, and convey the shore road allowance fronting property located at part lots 1 and 2, concession 8, geographic township of Stanhope on Cushog Lake, Johnstone, and that the applicant is requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure. Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
It's carried.
Thank you. Second up, another shore road allowance closing on Halls Lake.
Yeah, this property is currently developed. They are looking at potentially replacing the deck and a potential small addition on the front of the building. Most of the building is located on the shore road allowance, so that's the first step in the process, and they're looking to get on with that, and would recommend proceed through the regular steps.
Any questions from council on this? May I, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
I just wonder if this will lead likely to a application for variance.
Potentially, yes. My understanding is they're finalizing a design for the potential addition. If they stick with just replacing the deck, I don't believe a minor variance will be required, but once we have detailed plans, we'll know for sure. But they are aware that there is a potential that they will require one.
Okay.
Okay, anything else from council? May I have a mover and a seconder? Everybody's frozen, so I can't see your hands. Give me a minute. I see Deputy Mayor Danielson's hand, and anybody else? Somebody move. We're all frozen.
Councillors Barry and Short Reed both have waving hands.
Thank you. Councillors Barry and Short Reed. Oh, I picked Liz, so it's Liz and Lisa Barry.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Danielson, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved that council hereby approves in principle an application made to stop, up, close, and convey the shore road allowance fronting property located at part lot 15, concession 7, geographic township of Stanhope on Halls Lake, Cruz Weisner, and that the applicant is requested to proceed in accordance with the shoreline road allowance closing procedure. Councillor Barry, yes or no?
Yes. Yes.
Councillor Short Reed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
It's carried.
Next up is a severance on Northern Lights Drive on Cushog.
Yes, so this is an interesting one where 3 lots were created back in 1990, I believe. The severance did go to the Ontario Municipal Board at the time. It was approved there, lots created. And then in 2004, the shore road allowances in front of those lots were transferred, and the lots inadvertently remerged back to how they were. And Mr. Shapira, the lawyer for the owner of those properties, has submitted a proposal to resever those lots to how they were originally created. And there is a detailed process on how we can achieve that. Essentially, we would take back the shore road allowance for those parcels. Then the title of the lots would be corrected in such a way that they won't remerge upon the shore road allowance being transferred back to the properties. So the intent there is just to correct an issue of the lots merging on title. We have had Mr. Ewert also look at the proposal on behalf of the township, and it would appear he's in agreement with the proposal as set forward by Mr. Shapira. There will be some costs associated with this proposal, and it is my recommendation that the applicant be responsible for all those costs. So I am recommending we do proceed with the proposal as outlined, with the condition that a cost agreement be entered into between the applicant and the township.
Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Costs including both sides of legal fees.
Yes, that's correct.
I know.
Any other thoughts or comments from council? May I have a move? Oh, Councillor Barry.
I just have never seen advertence and misadventure in our report before. I quite thought that was interesting.
I would agree. I thought I've never seen that before either. Okay, may I have a mover and a seconder for this report? Councillor Short Reed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Short Reed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council acknowledge receipt of planning report PL 2820 regarding part of lot 3, concession 4, geographic township of Stanhope, 1263 Northern Lights Drive, submitted by Sean O'Callahan and dated June 18th, 2020. And the council hereby approves the applicant to proceed in accordance with the proposal as outlined by Mr. Shapiro to correct an inadvertent lot merger on their property located at Part Lot 3, Concession 4, Geographic Township of Stanhope on Couchag Lake. And further, that the approval is conditional on the applicants agreeing to be responsible for all costs associated with correcting the lot mergers. Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Short-Reed, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
It's carried.
And next up for you is a report about, this is coming back, we've seen it before, on Halls Lake Road.
Yes, this is a proposal to purchase a shore road allowance for this property. It's unique in that Halls Lake Road goes between the actual parcel of land they own and the shore road allowance where their house is located on. So this was originally presented to council in August of 2019. Council at that time requested clarification and more information on a few items. One being a survey, second being confirmation of necessary repairs to the septic system being completed, as well as more information on the septic line that actually crosses Halls Lake Road. So all the requested information has been provided, the survey attached to the report, the repairs have been completed to the septic system, and in consultation with our operations manager, the line crossing Halls Lake Road is not a concern. That being said, the survey they provided and what they're proposing to close was two separate parts on that plan. One being a part the building actually occupies, the second being a part behind that where is actually closer to the road. And also in discussions with the operations manager with the proposed reconstruction of Halls Lake Road, I think it would be in the township's best interest to hold on to what I believe is part 2 of that plan to ensure there's enough room if there's any necessary widening or improvements to the road that we're not selling land that we would actually be using for that project.
Yeah, this is a bit of a funny one. It's an unusual situation, and you know, I think I still have the same concerns that I did last time we saw it. I think they've been reduced by the work that's been undertaken. But yeah, I like the idea of hanging on to that second piece just in case. Sean, can you answer on the, because Liz is going to ask the same question. There appears to be a framed shed that is not on their property. What happens with that? Oh, Lisa's going to ask that question.
Yes, so that will need to be brought into conformance with the zoning bylaws. So either removed or minor variance approval depending on setbacks. So yes, that should actually also be included as a condition of the approval in principle if council wishes to move forward with that closure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, questions or comments from council on this? Anybody? Sean, is this in any way, I know planning matters are not meant to be precedent setting, but do you have any concerns that this might in any way be oddly precedent setting?
No, I don't have that concern. There are similar situations within the municipality where the house was actually constructed on a shore road allowance across the road. I believe it may actually be in that area. But I think with the merger agreement, binding those two parcels of land, the fact that the cottage has been there for a lengthy period of time, it was legally established. I think it's, I don't have any concerns that it would negatively impact the township by selling the shore road allowance to the property owner.
Okay, so sorry, the clerk is asking me a question that I'm probably not supposed to say out loud.
Oh, no.
What is it you'd like me
I
to
just
ask? Do we need to approve a principle for part 3?
The only, sorry, Sean, do we need to, in the recommendation, hereby approve in principle an application to stop up and convey part 3, or can we?
Just 1 second, I'm just gonna look at the survey here.
Yeah, because the recommendation, the way it's written, one could interpret it to mean both parts, and you're suggesting that we only convey part 3 and leave
That's
part 2
correct.
for purposes in the future. So
Yes.
perhaps for clarification and to prevent any future angst, we should clarify. Thank you for that. We should clarify that that we are stopping up, closing, and conveying part 3 of the shore road allowance.
Yes.
Okay, so Don will.
If we could also include a condition about the shed being brought into conformance with the zoning bylaw as well.
We will just have a musical interlude while the clerk crafts that.
Part 3.
Then you could maybe just add that where it says the approval of principle is conditional on the applicants. Maybe you could just add in there, bringing the frame shed into compliance and entering into a merger agreement. Would that make sense, Sean?
Yes, yeah, that does make sense.
So I'm just, I've already started one, so end that. Approval in principle. Is conditional. On the shed.
Okay, you have you've crafted that, have you? Do I need did I ask for a mover and a seconder, or that's where we are? Any further questions of council on the changes made to this this report? Okay, may I have a mover and a seconder to accept this? Councilors Barry and Dayu.
Moved by Councilor Berry, second by Councilor Dayu. Be it resolved, Council acknowledge receipt of planning report PL 2920 regarding part of lot 13, concession 10, geographic township of Stanhope, 1226 Halls Lake Road, submitted by Sean O'Callahan and dated June 18th, 2020. And the council hereby approves in principle an application made by Kenneth and Karen Carlin to stop up, close, and convey part 3 identified on the survey of the shore road allowance fronting their property, located at part lot 13, concession 10, geographic township of Stanhope and Halls Lake, and that the approval of principle is conditional on the applicants entering into a merger agreement for the purpose of joining the portion of the original shore road allowance with 1226 Halls Lake Road, and that the approval in principle is conditional upon the shed being brought into compliance with the township zoning bylaw, and that the applicant is requested to proceed in accordance with the township shore road allowance closing procedure. Moved by Council.
You already did that part.
Councilor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councilor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councilor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dennison, yes or no?
Yes.
And Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
It's carried.
Next up is Sean, your report on virtual public meetings. If you'd like to take us through that.
Sure. Yes, so the province back in April of this year did give municipalities the power to either pause planning timelines or move forward and hold virtual public meetings. At that time, it was my opinion to hold off, given the climate we were in. Now with restrictions being lifted, and most municipalities are now moving forward with the virtual formats for public meetings, I'm recommending that we do proceed with that ourselves. Also, further to that, the province, effective Friday, lifted the ability for municipalities to pause these planning timelines. So essentially, we do need to move forward now with holding public meetings in accordance with the Planning Act. So that is my recommendation, that we move forward with holding public meetings during our regular council meetings for zoning bylaw amendments, as well as the Committee of Adjustment. I think we should move forward with those applications as well.
Thank you for that. My question, in case anybody else had the same one, was my concern was very often we don't get a lot of people at public meetings, but people will come to a public meeting because they can just sit in the council chambers. And when I asked 3 times if anybody has anything to say for or against an application, somebody might not have any interest or intent to say something, but on the heels of someone else making a comment, they might decide, oh, now I have something to say. So my question was, how would the meetings accommodate someone who hasn't pre-registered to make comment, and then during the meeting suddenly realizes they want to make a comment? And that question was put to Sean, and I think the answer, Sean, is that everybody should pre-register, and the bottom line is if you have not pre-registered to make comment, you just can't. That's just the end of it. Sean, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, and I have looked into that since the question was raised, and that's an excellent question. And one potential, I guess, solve to that is, the way I envisioned it rolling out would be people would pre-register so they can actually attend the Zoom meeting. Maybe not necessarily to speak, but to at least follow along. And if for some reason a question did come up, there is I believe in Zoom, there's an ability to raise your hand, or a button that will raise your hand that would alert the moderator. So potentially we could look at that option if someone didn't submit their comments beforehand, or if something came up during the meeting. They would still need to pre-register for the meetings to be involved that way, but yeah, there are limited options with the format.
It's not my understanding that we would be doing these meetings by Zoom because of challenges with internet, the public's familiarity or unfamiliarity with how Zoom works, getting people into meetings, making sure people are following the process correctly. So am I incorrect about that?
Sorry, was that?
That's for you, Sean. Yep.
Okay. The meetings that I've watched have been through Zoom, so that was my intent to go through that format. But I'll certainly be working with IT to see if there are other options available.
And then I do see those hands. How would we then accommodate somebody who has an interest in a particular issue, and we welcome their public comment, but they simply don't have the equipment, the capacity, the internet access, the bandwidth to participate by Zoom? Are we then obligated to provide some sort of public space where they can participate?
Yep, that is a challenge. So there is the option that they could phone in, or alternatively, some municipalities have set up a computer for members of the public to use. So we could look at that option as well.
I did see 2 hands, and I'm sorry, I don't know whose hand was first. So I'm going to start at the top of my screen with Councillor Dayu.
Yeah, I've participated in a few webinars where there are a bunch of attendees, and you basically are there to listen. But if you do have something to say or ask, the hand button has worked. Also submitting the question by, by sort of chat room also seems to have worked. So that was hopeful. Obviously this is a different context, but in short, my experiences as an attendee on Zoom in public conferences has been positive. And so my question then is, would people be able to submit questions or comments in advance through writing to you, Sean, to be reflected? I don't know if the clerk would read them out or something like that. Is that permitted in a public meeting?
Yes, and in fact, I would be encouraging people to do that, to also submit in writing for that very reason. If there are connection issues, then they still have their ability to appeal an application should they wish to. Their comments are received then
Right.
for sure. So,
Right.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson?
So just to be clear, we can have the committee itself can meet through a Zoom meeting. If someone wishes to present to the committee and has Zoom capabilities, they could be brought in. And if they don't have those capabilities, they can phone in and we can converse with them through that mechanism. Correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Are there any, sorry, I'm just trying to shift screens here between an email, Sean's email, and sorry, you'll have to, I've made a fatal mistake. I've come to the meeting without my computer charger and I'm at 26%. So we're passing notes back and forth. Does anyone use a Mac? Does anyone have a charger? So I'm just full disclosure. And I have no idea where we are. So Sean answered Liz's question and Lisa has a question.
Just to clarify, I think I read somewhere that we are reserving computers at the rec center right now. Is that correct? Did I read that somewhere?
Yes, in the EOC notes that council has
Yes.
provided, yes?
Yes. So technically if someone didn't have a computer right now, if that could be a possibility as well.
Who's going to set them up? So somebody comes to the rec center because they have an interest in a matter and they don't know how to use Zoom, they don't have an account, or would we anticipate that that recreation staff would hold their hand through that? I think that's unreasonable. I think if those who are uncomfortable with the Zoom process they can call in. Like what I'm looking for is the reasonable balance between providing an opportunity for the public to have input through a public process, which we encourage, while not burdening the process through a lack of technology knowledge. To me, that's the struggle. What happens if somebody is, and again, I'm just sort of throwing things out sort of in the middle of nowhere. You know, I'm sitting in a building that is supposed to have 100 meg up and down, and we've lost our stability a dozen times today. So what happens if somebody has a right through the public process to have access to a meeting and there's unstable internet or there's another kind of challenge, and then they are inadvertently denied their opportunity to participate in the public process? What do we do with that? Would it not be better to just fall to the common denominator, which is participants shall participate by telephone? How much risk do we take in terms of the unstable internet services that we know we have in our daily lives in this community?
Yep, that is a challenge for sure. I mean, the one thought that comes to mind is agents or applicants sometimes will bring their own presentation, at which point they would need the ability to participate via traditional Zoom meeting with screen sharing capabilities. But I mean, if council wants to limit it to just phone in capabilities, we can certainly do that. It's a new process that I think will be, I mean, it's some trial and error for sure, but
Mhm. Would council feel comfortable with Sean framing this up with a few more details and scenarios and opportunities and options and bringing it back? Or what would you like to do there? I mean, I will confess, I have serious concerns about our ability to provide an adequate process for public consultation in a duly constituted public process with the challenges we have with internet and access and the generalized IT knowledge of some members of the community. I see a lot of hands. I think I saw Lisa Berry's hand up first.
I just wondered about deferring that, but I was going to say defer it to the Committee of Adjustment, but I guess they're not meeting, so kind of a bit of the cart before the horse.
The Committee of Adjustment would not make this decision. It's a decision of council, if that's what you were meaning. Jen, did I see your hand up there, Councillor Dayu?
Yes, I think there is some wisdom in just being really honest with folks and saying we're in unusual times. There are a variety of means for you to participate. We would encourage you, however, to write your thoughts and get them into the planner or the clerk before the meeting, just in case something fails, because we all know how it is up here, and internet can be a bit shifty, and so let's work together on this. And if you're at all concerned you're not going to be heard, then by all means we're welcoming your written submission.
Other thoughts? Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Well, I just wonder, I'm sort of interested in trying to get the process back in place as quickly and as efficiently as we can. If something failed for some reason or other, someone had a significant issue with one of the applications that was being brought forward and internet failed, would there be the ability to defer that one application?
I think that would be reasonable in a situation like that if it were to arise. Yes.
I see that as a potentially unnecessary stumbling block in terms of I see it as what's the safest, most reliable and efficient manner to provide for public input from the get-go, and stick with that. For example, if the Committee of Adjustment was going to meet, Liz, you're the chair, Dawn, Fire Dawn, as we call her, is managing the IT portion of this meeting and the bringing of people in and out, clicking the recording button, sharing the live stream, and running the technology of it. Who's going to be trained and run that? It wouldn't be you as the chair, because it's impossible to chair a meeting and then do all that clicking at the same time. It wouldn't be the planner because he's busy running the files. So then does that mean that there would have to be another staff member who would be trained in the management of the background IT work of running these meetings by Zoom, and then take that person away from existing or other pressing duties to manage the IT portion of those meetings? Like those are my questions. I don't have the answers.
Well, I mean, obviously the easiest, most efficient, reliable method for members of the public to address the committee are telephone. They could be combined with a written submission. And if there still are issues, well, then there is the option to defer. Would prefer not to do that, but it might be for anyone who wants to speak to an issue, the easiest thing is by phone.
And could it be that they would reserve their speaking spot, of course, and then they would, I presume, would use the same conference little orb we have here in the council chambers, and somebody would have to just manage those calls in and out. And that just may be the easier way. Councillor Shortreed, I see your hand there. What say ye?
I'm just going to agree with Liz. I don't think, because there are times when there's more than one person, so they can be on a speakerphone together. I think it'll be more efficient if we use the phone than anything else. Even just what we're doing today is cutting out. So It'll just prolong it that way.
So is that where we've landed in the short term, is to allow participation by telephone and written submission? So if an agent, for example, had a report that they wanted the committee to look at, it would be provided ahead of time, and not unlike the auditor today could say, draw your attention to page 2, and then, or I would draw your attention to page 3, that the committee would have those documents in front of them.
Yep, we could look at that. Yep.
Sorry, and I sincerely apologize. We are struggling to see if I can plug in my 25% notes. That's because this is a new computer. So if we landed then at least for the short term, would do telephone and written submission, and it would just be a process, not unlike we're doing Liz's chair. It's just a slower process, sort of a step by step, to ensure that public participation is allowed, and that anybody who might be speaking for or against an application would have to pre-register to get in the telephone queue to phone in to have their say. Would that make sense?
Yep.
Okay, is that where you want to land, or what do you want to do with that? Any further conversation? I just really have serious concerns about the reliability of internet, and the fact that the people having to wait if they themselves are technologically savvy and have a Zoom account and know how it all works, and there's some undue delays due to the technological challenges of others who may be participating. It seems a bit of a rocky road to me. I'm going to go to Councillor Dayu, and then I'll go back to you, Sean.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the important thing is we're going to try our best. And if it doesn't work, then we're going to review it, and we're going to try our best with the new information that we have. And frankly, if we need a special meeting to rearrange stuff in advance of a public meeting in order to get her done, I would be in favor of placing the priority on the public engagement and having that special meeting to rearrange. So yeah, let's just do our best and then go with what we know the first time around.
Okay, so Sean's direction is he doesn't have to bring the process back. We're saying that public participation in committee of adjustment meetings will be via telephone and documentary submission ahead of time, and people will be if you want to have a say, you have to register, and if you have not registered and suddenly in any public meeting decide you have something to say, you will be, unfortunately, you can't do that. And I think if we clearly explain at the front end what the process is, there will be a few gaps here and there, but as you say, Councillor Dayu, we're learning as we go. Lisa Berry?
And again, this is during the emergency measures?
I think it's just during the emergency and the distancing to abide by the public health recommendations. Is that correct, Mr. O'Callaghan?
Yes, I would recommend we go back to our traditional public meeting format as soon as possible.
And Deputy Mayor, did you have something you wanted to add there?
No, I think we're good. I mean, as Councillor Dayu said, if we need to make a change, if we find that it doesn't work, then we'll change it. Just do everything that we can to ensure that people can be involved. I was just going to say it also that it's been extremely rare for someone in the audience to have a sort of an ad hoc comment to make. That hasn't happened for a long time, that somebody just decides, wait a minute, I don't like that.
Watch it happen in the first meeting. Okay, so Sean, have you heard, you've got one more thing to say because your hand's in the air.
Yes, so just to clarify, so I'm 100% clear, a zoning bylaw amendment application, if I were to bring that forward to our next council meeting will be in a Zoom format, and anyone wishing to speak to that if they register beforehand, will get the phone-in information to that Zoom meeting.
Yes.
Okay. And for committee of adjustment, if we were to hold a committee of adjustment meeting, it would be in a Zoom format. And again, anyone wishing to speak to the application would only have the ability to do that through telephone.
That's what I'm hearing concurrence for.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw a wrench in the works. Well, I have a strong internet signal at my house and I'm fully conversant in Zoom. Why do I have to phone in? But you can't, the problem is you can't piecemeal. We can't have custom situations for every different person. I think the important thing is to clearly lay out a process that will be perfect for some and inconvenient for others. And we have to find the balance of what's best for the process, I think. Lisa Berry.
If I am phoning in to make comment, is it only my voice that I'm hearing, or am I hearing the whole committee's discussion?
You would be listening to the entire meeting. Well, I guess you could either one, follow it on the live stream that's available, and then have your phone ready for when it's your turn to speak.
That's fine.
Or two, you'd be listening by phone the whole time.
Okay.
And I think the instructions would clearly lay out the options. So you may participate in one of these two ways. You may dial into the Zoom meeting and listen to it, or you can watch it. But then if someone's going to watch it on the live stream, then we have to make sure that they understand to have their computer on mute so you don't have all the feedback.
Yeah.
So, clear instructions.
Yeah, the most important part is having them pre-register so I can have that conversation with them and really spell it out to make sure that there's no issues.
Well, let's hope we can get back to our usual way of doing meetings sooner than later. Was there another hand around there somewhere? Anybody? We said all we need to say about this.
Just clarification.
The clerk would like clarification.
So the council's going to approve with the holding of virtual public meetings by telephone.
By telephone only at this stage, yeah.
Or public involvement by telephone, but the meeting itself would take place by Zoom.
Yeah, that's right. So the meeting participants, or be careful with the language.
Committee members.
Committee members are Zoom.
For the council staff proceed with preparation for necessary preparation for holding of virtual public meetings for public attendance.
Wherein public attendance shall be by telephone.
Wherein
Attendance / participation shall be by telephone. Does that sound right?
wherein public
What's going on?
Dawn is crafting. Okay, can we have a mover and a seconder for this resolution? I see Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry. Be resolved, council acknowledge receipt of planning report PL 3120 regarding virtual public meetings submitted by Sean O'Callahan dated June 18th, 2020. And further, the council hereby approves staff to proceed with the necessary preparation for holding of virtual public meetings wherein public attendance participation shall be by telephone. Councillor Barry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayou, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes,
That is carried.
thank you for that. I think that's it for you, Sean.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think the only thing for external boards, I will start to move along quickly because now I'm at 21%, sorry. is the very long CPAC resolution. Draft resolution, I hope it's self-explanatory. Council did discuss this previously and asked that CPAC be asked to take the development of those two new requirements in hand, and having discussed it, there is no municipality that can individually manage this. And so pursuant to what I hope is support of this, there's a meeting to discuss it further, to take it to the county next week. And I believe Highlands East and maybe Dysart have already supported this. Highlands East for sure. And it will go to, this same resolution will go to Minden Hills on the 25th. And this will appear at County Council at its July meeting. So is it understood what it's asking for? Does anybody have any questions? Councillor Dayu?
Yes, and agreed.
Sorry, you were all broken up there for me.
Sorry, it was clear and I agree.
Great. Anybody else? My connection is now unstable. May I have a mover and a seconder for this CPAC resolution? Councillor Shortreed and Councillor Berry. Oh, I'm missing an E in the word government.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Berry. Whereas the provincial government has mandated all municipalities take the lead on the development of a community safety and well-being plan, the purpose of which is an integrated approach to the service delivery of a wide range of community sectors, agencies, and organizations, including but not limited to local government, police services, health, mental health, education, social services, and community and custodial services for children and youth, that is intended to develop strategies and programs for local priorities, i.e. risk factors, vulnerable groups, protective factors related to crime and complex social issues. And whereas discussions about the development of such a plan for Haliburton County have been held at the Community Policing Advisory Committee, CPAC, meetings attended by the mayors of all 4 municipalities and the Haliburton Highlands OPP detachment commander. And whereas a ministry provided webinar offered to municipalities was attended by representatives from all 4 municipalities on March 21st, 2019. And whereas said representatives determined at the conclusion of the webinar that the undertaking was substantially beyond the resources of the municipalities, particularly with respect to the requirement of the 4 named sectors, agencies, and organizations that currently report to provincial ministries to report to municipalities. And whereas the provincial government has since mandated that all police services boards and community policing advisory committees be replaced with detachment boards that are to be designed, implemented, managed, and financed by municipalities. And whereas the ministry intends that community safety and well-being plans shall inform the development of detachment boards, and whereas the Haliburton Highlands Community Policing Advisory Committee, CPAC, having discussed the matter again on June 1st, 2020, and having concluded that both projects cannot be managed by CPAC or by any one municipality. And whereas the members of CPAC, with the support of the OPP detachment commander, respectfully request that assistance be sought from the County of Haliburton to take the lead on these important matters. Be it resolved that the councils of Algonquin Highlands, Dysart et al., Highlands East, and Minden Hills support seeking assistance from the County of Haliburton to pool modernization funds for the development of an RFP for the creation of the community safety and well-being plan, which will lead to the development of a detachment board. Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you for your support on that. The only thing about the library board, which I'm sure folks have seen either in the news or on social media, is that curbside pickup is beginning. Liz, help me out. 26th? I think it's the 26th.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure of the date.
Yeah, it's soon, but I think that's the only thing that's moving forward with the library board. Not that they're not doing things, but that's the big announcement there. Correspondence. Did anything get supported? No. Okay, so we can just have a mover and a seconder to accept the correspondence report. Councillor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that council receives the correspondence listing for the period of May 15th, 2020 to June 11th, 2020 for information. Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
And Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes,
That's carried.
thank you. For those who may be enjoying this meeting from home, we are about to move into closed session, so that will conclude the public portion of our meeting. Members of council will just hang on a moment until the technology is withdrawn. But hang on a second, what do we do?
Just going to read the motion to move into closed.
We're going to read the motion to move into closed. I am corrected by the clerk. I would like a mover and a seconder to do that. Councillor Berry, Councillor Shortreed.
A question.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we going to have a brief pause before we have our closed session?
Indeed, that's an excellent suggestion. So we'll do the motion to move into closed, and then everybody will stay where they are while the IT is backed off, and then we'll have our break and then reconvene. So.
Get a mover in a second.
I did. I think it was Councillors Berry and Shortreed, I believe.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved that council adjourns its open session at 12:33 in order to proceed into closed session for the purpose of discussing the following. 1, to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal board or employees in accordance with section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended, candidates for committee of adjustment. 2, to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees in accordance with section 239(2)B and litigation or potential litigation in accordance with section 239(2)E of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended. 3, to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees in accordance with section 239(2)B and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose in accordance with section 239(2)F of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended. And 4, to discuss personal matters about identifiable individuals, including municipal or local board employees in accordance with section 239(2)B and labor relations or employee negotiations in accordance with section 239(2)D of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended. Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
And Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you, and we'll just hold still until the technology is with us. Okay, thank you for your patience. We are reconvened in the public portion of this meeting. If I could have a mover and a seconder to go back into open session. Councillor Dayu, Councillor Berry.
Moved by Councillor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Berry. Be resolved, council adjourns its closed session at 2:11 p.m. and hereby resumes open session. Councillor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councillor Shortreed, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. And now could I have a mover and a seconder to appoint a new member of the Committee of Adjustment? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Danielson.
Moved by Councilor Short-Reed, second by Deputy Mayor Dennison, be it resolved that council hereby appoints John Rogers as a member of the Committee of Adjustment for the remaining term of council until a new committee is struck. Councilor Dayu, yes or no?
Apologies, yes.
Councilor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dennison, yes or no?
Yes.
Councilor Short-Reed, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
Carried.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda is just bylaws. Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the bylaws? Councilor Short-Reed and Councilor Berry.
Moved by Councilor Short-Reed, second by Councilor Berry, be it resolved the following bylaws be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. Bylaw 2020-52 to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement between Quinton Construction for the museum addition project. Bylaw 2020-53 to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement with Fowler Construction for the Quinto Lake ramp rehabilitation. Bylaw 2020-54 to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement with Hydro One Basic Connection for the museum addition project. Bylaw 2020-55 as amended to amend waste collection and disposal bylaw 2012-15 to provide for electronic payments. Bylaw 2020-56 to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign an agreement with More Propane for the supply and delivery of propane. And bylaw 2020-57 to appoint building inspectors related to the septic reinspection program. Councilor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Councilor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councilor Short-Reed, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dennison, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
That's carried.
Thank you. May I have a mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Councilor Short-Reed, Councilor Dayu.
Moved by Councilor Short-Reed, second by Councilor Dayu, be it resolved the bylaw 2020-50 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council during its June 18, 2020 meeting be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. Councilor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councilor Short-Reed, yes or no?
Yes.
Councilor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Dennison, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes. I'm sorry to see Deputy Mayor Danielson's got some company on the meeting.
That's carried.
That's scary. Thank you. And may I have a mover and a seconder for adjournment? Deputy Mayor Danielson and Councilor Short-Reed.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dennison, seconded by Councilor Short-Reed. Be it resolved that the June 18, 2020 regular council meeting is hereby adjourned at 2:15 p.m. Councilor Berry, yes or no?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Danielson, yes or no?
Yes.
Councilor Dayu, yes or no?
Yes.
Councilor Short-Reed, yes or no?
Yes.
Mayor Moffat, yes or no?
Yes.
It's carried.
Thank you, council and staff, and those out there in Radio Land, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.